Why do you hang around with the worst crowd, the worst crowd? It's gonna hurt me, 'cause you're with the world.
Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 20 of Third Man In. It's Mike Hickey here, along with Mr.
Terry Ryan.
And
it's Charles.
See, I'm trying to shake it up.
Counterclockwise way.
Yeah, Third Man In, of course, brought to you by Head Check Health. We have an exciting episode for you today. We have Jason MacDonald on the show. We've already recorded the interview with Jason, so if there's any point where we sound like we're talking about things that haven't happened yet, that's why. Sometimes we forget and talk about things we already talked about in the weird past tense, and it's a whole thing.
I've got something I was holding on to.
All right.
So I obviously a lot of people on this program are hockey fighters. I have only been and started one fight in public myself, not a hockey fight, and it was with a guy from Prince Edward Island named Jason MacDonald.
Hilarious.
Yeah, he also had, but my favorite part of it is okay, so it's a long story, but I ended up getting kicked out of a late night fast food place. It wasn't as much as a fight as it was like a one and done, one punch each side, and then we all got thrown out. But the best part of this, and he was from PEI, had the same nickname, J-Mac. I don't know if his first name was Jason, by the way.
I think anybody named Jason MacDonald goes by it's called J-Mac.
You know what? Anyhow, I forget why we even got in a fight, but there was two, like me and one of my friends who was in the Navy, and he tends to start fights, so I'm just going to throw him under the bus. And anyway, so we all get kicked out, and four of us, it was more or less you four fucking out. And then when we get out, the two guys from PEI are like, so you guys want to split a cab?
which is the most Atlantic Canadian thing ever.
There you go.
What are you going to say?
It is. What was I going to say?
I was saying about how like every dude named Jason MacDonald's called J-Mac.
Oh yeah. So Jason MacDonald's actual nickname back then, and even now, has been Frenchie. I don't know why. I don't know why it's Frenchie. I've always picked J-Mac because it sounds like Newfie a little bit too. Like Frenchie there's context. Maybe he's called Frenchie because his mother is originally French, and it's an insult to the family to call him Frenchie. I really don't know. It's one of those things that could go either way. Even if you're French, Frenchie kind of sounds. Not that I people call me Newfie, and it's a term of endearment usually. A lot of those highlight tapes and stuff I show, like you'll see them calling me Newfie often instead of Terry. But I took it as a term of endearment. It's context, so I just call him J-Mac for reasons that I don't know where Frenchie started, and it sounds a little bit. I don't know why. It shouldn't be insulting, but we're in 2019, right?
I actually, it's funny enough, I know a guy named Tate, and I've called him Tate for years. I got introduced to him as Tate, everything. I assumed his last name was Tate. And then eventually I found out, no, it's short for Tater because he likes Mary Browns. So maybe he just likes French fries. Maybe
one of my best friends, those in Newfoundland will know, one of my best friends is Steve Spock Kelly, and he's been Spock since he's 5 years old, and it's because he has huge ears. And I know that sounds really cruel, but his parents didn't ever step in, and Spock loves it. He embraced it. So I guess it's context, A, and B, who you're talking to and how they take offense to it or whatever. But anyway, for those, when I say J-Mac, any of my buddies out there from back in the day will recognize him as Frenchie.
So yeah, we had a great conversation with J-Mac that we already recorded. It's like an hour and 20 or something like that. And it's great. And we got a couple other things we want to talk about, because I mean, obviously, as we're recording this, we're hours away from the puck drop of Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. By the time you guys are listening to this, Game 7 is over, hopefully. So, with the way both these goalies have been playing, there's a solid chance this game's still fucking going on by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. But, yeah, it's going to be happening. So we got a couple things regarding that, some other crazy stuff that's going on in the wild world of sports this week. And we want to get into all that stuff and then get you J-Mac's interview. But first, let's take a second and listen to some words from our sponsor, Head Check Health.
Concussions are serious business. Concussions and post-concussion syndrome had a huge effect on my career. Whether you're a player, a concerned parent, a coach, a risk manager, or an executive, they're a major area of concern. Head Check Health has developed software and services that improve the way concussions are assessed, tracked, and managed at all levels of sport. Their goal is to create a safer environment of play by giving better tools to the individuals responsible for documenting and assessing concussions and providing better data to administrators to make real health and safety improvements. Head Check currently works with organizations across the country like the Canadian Junior Hockey League, BC Hockey, Rugby Ontario, the Western Lacrosse Association, and more to advance their concussion management practices. If you're interested in learning more how HeadCheck can help your team or organization, please visit headcheckhealth.com or email info@headcheckhealth.com. That's headcheckhealth.com or info@headcheckhealth.com and tell them TR sent you.
All right. So,
Mike,
it's
vitals check.
This is something we did last week when we did a live stream. It's actually down to 83.
Oh, okay, you're fine.
So it's dripping
You're
down.
fine. Yeah, you're calm. You're relaxed.
But yeah, so a couple hours away. Do we have any housekeeping? I know it's been a while since we did a proper episode. Last week, TR was out of town. How was your trip? You went up to Toronto for a bit?
It was a good time. I played for Team Ireland in the World Ball Hockey Federation Championship, so it's a little different. There's two federations going on. One is the International Street and Ball Hockey Federation. I play in that one for Team Canada. And, that's where the Newfoundland Black Horse falls under the Nationals every year. Mm-hmm. It's the official Worlds, right? Mm-hmm. It's the official league to be in, the national. It's like Hockey Canada. It's actually affiliated with Hockey Canada.
You guys wear the Hockey Canada logo, right?
You do.
Yeah.
Now, this one is so back in the day, it's a while ago now. When I say that, probably 12 years ago, the guys who ran this split off, and the guy from the WBHF, I won't say his name or anything, not an enemy of mine, but the guys, they really couldn't see eye to eye. And they made the rules really lax in this other one. That's why I can play for Ireland. I'm not from Ireland, neither are any of my parents, but my great-grandfather is. And if you have heritage, they say, because they're just trying to get more players and everything.
Build the program.
Yeah. So there's a chance for me and 4 or 5 Newfoundlanders. Mike Dyke was up there with me. Sean.
Great hockey name.
Fagan. Yeah.
I remember Mike playing baseball against him back when I was a kid.
Great
ball
athlete.
player.
Jeremy Bishop was there with us. So it was an excuse to see them. And, it's a great, we raised money and everything. And they are, I'm probably raised the least, and they're nice enough to include me in the trip and all that. So they get that for me. I appreciate it. And it's also a chance. I'm talking with some producers about a couple of shows that I co-wrote. And, usually Toronto's a hub for that. So I stayed a few extra days because I needed to do that and then see a gentleman about getting a new book deal. So for me, my work is here and a little bit in Toronto. And when I can mix a little ball hockey tournament in, I will. So that's what I was doing there. It was a bit of fun. And now, not to mention the whole Raptors fucking thing.
I was going to say, yeah. You're there, what's the city like?
It's
got to be just buzzing,
It's
right?
buzzing, and everywhere we went, it was a zoo. I mean, a zoo, like in such a great positive way. Some of these places you go and maybe people might get a little violent or whatever, but there were, and what was great that you don't see on TV, but a lot of people were out in their Leafs jerseys. A lot of people had FC jerseys on. It was like this community. If you're in Jurassic Park itself, you'll see all Raptors jerseys. Yeah, but it was almost like, people just put their sports jerseys on.
Whatever Toronto sports jersey you had.
So and I hate a lot of hockey players I know. They won't say it, but you read their Twitter feed, or they'll say, I don't know what the big deal is. Or they're almost pitting one against the other. When the Raptors are winning, or the Jays, it's a nationwide thing. It's a country. It's a whole country getting behind it. And
you ain't got no one else.
Right.
It's as simple as that. We ain't got no one else.
If the Leafs were in, I'm sure Toronto would be just as crazy. For the country, maybe not, because you get, but I guarantee everybody would be watching. But you might not get the whole country behind you because there's 6 or 7. Or is it NHL teams? Is it 6?
7 now.
7.
Yeah.
But what do you mean now?
Well, I just mean now because Winnipeg came back.
It
was
8.
6 for a long
Let's not
time.
kid ourselves.
Winnipeg
It'll
now.
be 8 within 10 years.
So
Winnipeg's been back for like fucking 8 years, and I'm still qualifying.
Now,
they're back.
what, did fucking Lac La Biche get in? Did Hamilton get a team that I didn't know about?
Quebec will be in there within 10 years.
But in any case, so you get that vibe. But to me, it's great. I love it, and to get more people that can get into basketball. To me, I'm a team sports guy.
Yeah.
And I found out while I was up there that we have the second most. I think it's 15. The second most. There's U.S. nationality. What a weird way to butcher that. Second most nationality. The nation with the second most players in the league is Canada with 15. And we're only going to get more in that department. I credit Vince Carter for that. Kawhi Leonard's playoff, the Raptors in general, is going to lead to more kids playing team sports. If it's basketball, so fucking be it. To me, watching Kawhi Leonard score in Game 7, watching the
What an
Raptors
athlete.
come
What an
together.
athlete.
Yeah. And you know, the humble. He doesn't do it for likes. He doesn't do it for Twitter retweets. He does it because he wants to win. All that is so great. It's great for hockey players to see. You know, a young kid like Alex Newhook who's going to go in the NHL draft, who's probably never going to play basketball. It's good for him. It's a sports thing. It's a leadership thing. And I wasn't even going to get there. But I guess, telling you about my trip, I was really proud to be a Canadian. And I'm telling you, some of those bars I was in, it was nothing but Leafs jerseys. And people going, go Raptors, let's go Raptors. And it was a feeling in Toronto of, you know what? It definitely wasn't one against the other. It was like,
And I'm
we're
glad
here.
to hear that. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little story. I go to the Duke here in St. John's every Thursday for the last, I don't know how many years. And there's about 6 or 7 gentlemen. I don't know their name. But whenever there's not a hockey game on Thursdays, they ask to put the Raptors on.
Yep.
They're big Raptors guys. And I am right now running around, you know, the city saying, let's go Raptors. I'm going down early tomorrow night to get a seat and all this stuff. I won't pretend that I know a lot about basketball. I grew up with two of my pretty close friends are huge basketball first guys. But the weird narrative that people are saying like, oh, well, you know, if this was hockey, it'd be this. Well, it's not hockey. We've only got one team in this. It's we're one win away. Just it's that the comic image where there's a cartoon guy clamping someone's lip and just says shh. Let people enjoy stuff. Well, fucking let people enjoy stuff.
Like, look, I mean, like right now, it's the one team we have in Canada. I mean, and
Sorry, Vancouver.
when
Yeah.
and when the Jays had their back-to-back World Series titles, the Expos were still a thing, but it was still the country coming together because one of the two Canadian teams made it that way. And I mean, it's been a long time. I mean, it's been now 8 years since the Canucks were the last Canadian team to make it to the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah.
And even then, I mean, I was against my Bruins, and so I was a little bit skewed, but everybody else I knew was like very much on the Canucks wagon. And the same thing happened with Edmonton. The same thing happened with Calgary. Calgary probably more so than I can remember.
Calgary, I went through these. I think Calgary might have been the biggest one.
I think it was Calgary was the one that picked up the biggest national support, right?
And they did.
Because it was such a Cinderella run,
in my
too.
mind, I don't think it can get bigger. I'm including the Leafs. I'm including the Habs.
Oh yeah, no, definitely
But
not.
what I'm saying
this
is
is one. This is
Yeah.
one country
Right? Yeah.
with one team.
It's great that you all get out and rally around it. And I think if Calgary or any of those Canadian teams got in the Stanley Cup Final, I think the
You'd get
viewership.
pockets. Yeah, you get pockets of it.
I think the viewership in general would be more.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason. So most people would get behind Calgary. Those that weren't would be interested more than St. Louis, Boston. They're probably all going to. I'm not going to say more fans or more national pride or energy would go into it the same way it is now. I liken it. The closest thing I remember to this, it isn't even when the Jays won it, because again Montreal were around, so there's still some people going, "Fuck the Jays."
Yeah.
Now this feels like a couple of years ago when Bautista hit that shot.
Yeah,
Except
that-
that was in the.
that was-
That wasn't even in the final.
That wasn't even the pennant.
That wasn't
Nope.
even the pennant.
No, that was
So
a
it's-
division
So
series, wasn't it?
here we are now rewriting history books, and with a sport and sorry, quote unquote, you know, not a quote unquote, but in the United States they consider it you know, almost blasphemous. Some of them think, you know, because it's not our sport, which is so stupid. Because I mean, you know, there's a draft and all that. Even when if a Canadian team wins, I'm happy for that city. The players on the team, I don't fucking care. Like St. Louis got the most Canadians, if you want to go that way. But what I do think that happens as a result of something like this, more than anything, is that we can all, unless you're a bitter fuck, you better be cheering for the Toronto Raptors tomorrow night, or you've been a Golden State fan your whole life.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
different.
That's
Yeah.
you know,
But to just pick, and you know what?
Speaking of which, wasn't Kevin Durant? Didn't he grow up a Raptors fan? Did I
He-
hear
he
that
did
somewhere?
say that. He
I
did
mean,
say
Steph
that.
Curry's dad played for the Raptors.
Yeah, Steph
I mean,
Curry
come on.
lived in Toronto for a long time.
Yeah, his wife's from Markham.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I didn't
Lived in-
know that.
Yeah, for a long time.
Can I spin this into my intentional offsides?
Well, it depends on what your international.
My
your
intentional
intentional
offsides-
offside is.
Okay, my intentional offsides is essentially, I've noticed, okay, it's Game 7. It's a big game. In my opinion, this is what hockey's all about. Game 7, Stanley Cup Finals, someone fucking wins it tonight.
Yeah.
I'm kind of sick of people tuning in to cheer against a team for whatever reason. If your team might be a rival of the Boston Bruins, you might be tuning in going, oh gee, play Gloria or whatever like that, and you haven't really watched a game or in a while since your team got put out. Today I was someone came up to me today and said, well, geez, you must really want the Blues to win. I said, well, there's reasons for each side, but not overly. I said, well, what do you think? Well, they put your team out. That was months ago.
Yeah.
I said
that was
literally
that was so fucking
Yeah,
long
but
ago
you're
now.
months ago. I don't think I don't think, to me anyway, I don't think hockey is about sitting down and gritting your teeth and spitefully cheering against.
But what
something.
are you complaining against? The nature of fandom?
Yeah, well, just the real serial anger fandom, bitterness,
Hate
bitter
fandom.
hate
Yeah.
fandom. Yeah.
Ah, okay. Well, hate,
I
that's
love
different.
hating the Bruins would be a good quote.
Yeah, but
Well,
is,
that's- yeah.
is hate in that case like saying starving? It's a figure of speech. I'm not really starving.
Yeah,
when
I wouldn't
say
say it's
If I say I hate the Bruins, I don't think
Yeah, I
anybody
don't think
actually.
you're. Yeah, no, okay.
Now we'll just agree to disagree. I think that's what makes people interested, and if it takes some fucking bandwagon or some non-bandwagon for people to tune in, maybe that guy he tunes in and sees Zdeno Chara playing with a fucking cage on his face and says, "Holy shit,
Yeah.
I love this sport." Maybe his buddy's watching with him. Yeah, I don't ever.
Well, the Blues have that.
I would never look at it. If there's a viewer, there's a viewer. However he got there, or she got there, or it got there, fine.
Well, that guy, I can't remember his Twitter handle, but there's a dude that's like hadn't watched a game of hockey before, and then a few years back, someone gave him tickets to the Blues, and he's become like this hockey
I saw
super
that.
fan. That guy's been
Yeah.
going, I mean, honestly,
He was
I'm
live
sitting
tweeting
here.
a Blackhawks Blues game.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting here in a Bruins jersey. There's a Bruins t-shirt on underneath it. I'm wearing a Bruins cap. I'm like losing my mind, stressed out, want the Bruins to win the fucking cup tonight.
Vital check.
So bad. It's fine. It's probably
Now,
fine.
if the Leafs were in,
but-
if the Leafs were in and knocked
Yeah.
out your Bruins,
Yeah.
and the Leafs were in now against Anaheim, say, let's
Yeah.
just say what a terrible pick. But anyway,
I'd
just in my
probably
hypothetical
be
world,
Leafs. I'd probably be
yeah.
Leafs.
So I wouldn't think
Yeah.
anything worse of you for that.
Yeah,
but if you went on Twitter
Yeah.
and said something that was the difference is ignorance
Yeah.
people going on
Yeah.
and claiming something that didn't happen if you're
Yeah.
not educated on it. But if you just happen to tune in and go, you know what? If your hate for Toronto is so big, then you must be a huge hockey fan. In the way I look at it. Right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
again, I'm using hate in dislike. 'Cause
Totally,
you don't
yeah,
really
yeah.
hate.
But I mean, honestly, if it wasn't for all this right now, like I think if the Bruins weren't in the final, like the Bruins are the only team that are in the final that would have me cheering for anybody besides the Blues in this. The Blues storyline is too fucking great
Yeah,
this year.
that's-
and
I've
honestly,
got-
like it's one of those things I want the Bruins to win so fucking bad. But if it wasn't the Bruins and it was any other team in the league up against the Blues, I'd have
I'm
the Blues.
kind of that way the other way around, Mike. Like I don't hate the Bruins at all. And when people, I got pissed off and vocal a couple times with Marchand, but you can't deny he's an exceptional player, one of the best in the league.
Oh, geez.
And-
If it was somehow he was healthy scratch tonight, I'd have a Bruins jersey on like
yeah.
Mike. If they were
it's
like they're
such a
healthy
fine-
scratching Marchand.
Yeah, it's
Put it
such
on.
a fine line, and to
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
what tips it one way is the great story of this Blues, and slightly like I don't like Marchand, so I might as well. But in many cases, I'd be cheering for the Blues or Bruins. I think the game they play is very all round and complete, and they're not the big bad ugly Bruins anymore. There was a few instances early in the playoffs. But I think that St. Louis, I mean, let's talk dirt,
Yeah.
right? But it's playoff hockey.
Yeah,
I don't want
yeah.
to say dirt. I think it's playoff hockey. I think the Bruins are good at playoff hockey,
Yep.
and that's why a lot of the times they rise to the occasion. I got nothing against them. I'm slightly on the other side because I love what the Bruins are doing, and I'd love to see a bunch of guys that have never won a Stanley Cup. Did anybody?
on the Blues team.
Did anybody?
Yeah.
Who?
I gotta look. But
Oscar Sundqvist has two. but
Perron
he
would
was
have got close last
he
year.
was Oscar Sundqvist was kind of a healthy scratch black ace, so I don't really know. I don't think he
Yeah.
saw much of the
They
ice
haven't got
time.
many.
They haven't got many.
I don't know the math, but in my head, the Bruins got way more.
The big thing I think on both sides. So if the Bruins win it,
I'm
I
betting
think-
no Blues got one.
I think I think this Bruins leadership is so good, and I might sound like an idiot when this airs. I can't close my eyes and picture the Blues winning this. So just when I close my eyes and picture the Stanley Cup getting lifted tonight, it's the Bruins.
Especially in Boston.
It's in Boston, their leadership group is so
It just
good.
doesn't seem like a thing that would happen in Boston.
Yeah, the one thing for me to take away from this is obviously Big Z. Chara, he's 40, 41. We've already done this before. I keep forgetting his age. When you're able to not only win a cup at that age, it's really important, but when you're able to lead a team to a cup at that age
And play with a broken
and
jaw.
play with a broken jaw, and do all
Amazing.
the things, all the small things that Zdeno Chara. If you listen to this program frequently at all, you know how much of a Chris Pronger fan I am. I think 10 years' time, a lot of people are going to be talking about Zdeno Chara like I talk about Chris Pronger.
Maybe
So if maybe 20 is what you said?
No, maybe so.
Oh, okay.
I can't say I disagree.
So, I mean, so to see Chara lead a team to the cup like that in his 40s, that's something to tune in for. On the other side, you've got obviously the Blues were in fire sale mode. You've got the new interim coach. I like the Pat Maroon story. Hometown boy goes home. It's a Game 7 Stanley Cup. I just can't, when I close my eyes, I cannot picture it. I don't even picture the Blues celebrating. I just picture John Hamm being fucking loaded, partying down.
I think it'd be good for the game if St. Louis wins.
They've never done it, so I mean, yeah.
It's just an area of the country that, has not had much success in hockey, man.
Well, literally none. And I mean, it's kind of been storied about just
stable
the bad
fan
luck.
base, though. That's
Stable
the crazy
fan base.
thing.
And I mean, as much as everybody always talks about the Blues or St. Louis being a baseball town,
Stable
and how
fan
rabid
base.
they are for the
Yeah.
Cards down there, it's still like it's such a
what's
big
funny?
deal. And I mean, they had what? They had like. How many people outside the game the other night? Like 60-odd thousand, something like that.
And
I mean, that's insanity.
That's
I really
overwhelming.
liked St. Louis. It's just weird. It's like underrated. You don't think to go there, and like, you know what I mean? If you could pick all these destinations, it's rare that you would go to St. Louis unless you wanted to see the Blues. But I remember going there and thinking, man, this is a cool place to visit. But you just don't. You just don't go there. It's just one of these places, and I encourage more people to do it. I love when this happens. It's like Nashville last year. Not that that was a secret, but I've always talked about, like, I couldn't believe the outdoors in Nashville, like the outdoor nightlife, the nightlife / outdoor nightlife, because there's this big area there that I've talked about for years. That's a lot more famous than the area in St. Louis. But St. Louis is one of those places. I have nothing bad to say about it. It was so cool. Real nice people, huge hockey fans. It's a little bit off the beaten path, but I can say nothing but I've only been there like 3 times, but it was fantastic every time.
And that's it. Is like between all the different storylines about the Blues that are great. I got to say, like, I obviously really want the Bruins to win the cup.
Well, I mean,
but,
they're your team.
But honestly, like, if I was gonna pick any other team to win it this year, I'm glad they're in the finals against I'm glad they're in the finals against the Blues. I think the Blues are a hell of a team. What they've done this year is absolutely incredible. I'm not a huge fan of Craig Berube's press conferences, but other than that, the team, and I mean, there's been some dirt in the last couple games. It's been getting a little. There's been some weird shit happening, and I think a lot of that plays into the way there's been some stuff said. There's been some things that happen on the ice. There's things that happen off the ice and stuff that's just it's kind of messing up the narrative of it. But at the same time, I'm just overall just really excited for tonight.
There's a lot
and
of
more
positives.
than anything, I'm
There's
like
a lot of
pumped to
positives
trim
to
my
take
beard
away.
tomorrow.
Oh yeah, it's getting pretty shaggy there.
It is. It's getting pretty shaggy.
Anyone want to guess to wager a score here?
No, I can't.
I'm not going to let you do it. TR,
I'm going to say 4-3 overtime Blues.
Don't do that.
Oh,
David
my
Perron.
God. This
OT.
This
we
guy,
got to see an
God.
OT Game 7 at some point.
Oh,
I
my
would.
God.
I would love to see an OT Game 7.
could
Mike, I would
throw
never
up
want to do
thinking
that
about
to you.
it. I could throw up thinking about
once
it.
again, I tell you, when I close my eyes and picture it, you are having a pretty needling night. I got 3-1, but after the first 40, there's no score.
Yeah,
That's what I got.
could see something like that happening,
the way the goaltenders have been playing. I
I
got
just-
3-1 for your Bruins, but it's going to be 40 minutes of no scoring.
I'm
So
just-
Guys,
yeah.
I got one thing I want to get to.
Okay.
all right, let's do it.
Again, because I got to get back to it because we were talking about the basketball and the Kevin Durant, right?
Yeah.
We were. Yeah.
We were going to get to Kevin Durant.
Yeah, we were going
Durant,
to.
but
So I want to get to one thing that a lot of people aren't talking about as they talk about Durant. So we know what we know is that Durant played with an Achilles problem. He got hurt. He had 11 or 12 points in the first quarter. He was dominating.
Yep.
He was doing exactly what they wanted him to do. He was going to have one of those playoff performances, I think, from one of the legends.
Yeah.
He gets hurt. So for a brief moment,
Bad.
Oh, it was
Did you
hard to
see the
watch.
like
yeah,
slow-mo?
I did.
Oh.
And the Achilles, that injury is one of the worst injuries you can possibly have as a basketball player or
they
tennis
threatened
player.
to cut Alex McGillney's Achilles when he was leaving. When he was leaving the.
Yes, or so is said, right? But so anyway, the fans when he first got hurt, there was a small minority, but they did in Toronto. They clapped, and it looked Bush League for a little while. It certainly did, right? Now, what I'm going to gloss over, because in my opinion, that was shit. But right after that, when Durant got up and they realized he was real hurt and they realized what happened, they started chanting KD. They clapped. They know they're knowledgeable basketball fans. They know how good he is. They were cheering not only for, the fact that he's a great player, But the fact that he fucking tried, and he went out there and tried, and you could hear people, and there was far more applauding and standing up when they realized the seriousness of the injury. So when he was going off. So I think, and there was a lot of people anyway comparing one thing that I'm going to talk about in a minute with the women celebrating after beating Thailand in the USA in the World Cup for Team USA. So a lot of people compare the fans' reaction to what the girl did. And I'll tell you why it's different. Well, first of all, it's two completely different situations. And you're talking about a player rubbing it into another player as opposed to fans reacting. And there's a group. Hold on,
Did you see in all of that? What's lost in all of that is the Raptors players when they first saw that he was actually hurt.
Yeah.
They just kept doing that.
Like
just
Lowry was getting
down.
the quiet down the crowd.
Yeah,
and I think to some degree there's a contingent of the fans that did cheer that were cheering because the ball got turned over. It wasn't because he was hurt. I think it was that.
And there's going to be a small amount that are going to do it, but when they let's just say I'm in the crowd.
Yeah.
Now you're next to me in the crowd.
Yeah.
And I go, oh my God, Durant's injured. Like, because when you hear an accumulated, it's different if one person goes, oh, fuck him, he's injured, yay. But you had a bunch of people, first of all, that there was a level of excitement. It's an embarrassing subconscious level, but there is a level of excitement. So there's going to be a murmur. So the voice of the murmur, if people were standing up cheering and applauding and throwing off streamers, that's different. But there is going to be a level of, you're going to hear that. And you heard it. Now, a few people did clap. I would say
a couple people waved by. They had pictures and shit. Yeah.
When they so to me, it was way outweighed. But that's not even what I was going to get at. Now we know that. So I've covered that. Within all that is I want to point something out, and I've pointed it out about Kawhi Leonard and his unselfishness, and this should be noted because Kevin Durant. I'm not saying I was ever a huge fan. He controversially, a couple years ago, came over from Oklahoma City to play for the Golden State, and he joined a team that was probably already going to win. Yeah. I'm not going to say I hated him for that. He wanted to win, but I wasn't his biggest fan. This guy's in a contract fucking year.
That's what I took away from this.
Yeah,
that's the big thing for me. It's like, oh boy, it does not only fuck up his career, but that fucks up potentially the rest of his
which
career.
Says two things. First of all, I don't know who let him play, but again, we don't know how adamant he was to play. Mm-hmm. But being in a contract year, it's one thing to go out and say, this guy's got balls, and Freddie Van Fleet came back and he lost a tooth, or this guy in hockey got still Zdeno Chara's playing with a cage on, with a broken jaw. All those things are admirable, yes they are, and they're team things. But Kevin Durant is risking at least $100 million by going out and doing that. I don't know, boy, if I got cold shivers when I watched him playing, and you knew it, he was injured. He didn't just get hurt that game. He was hurt a month ago. He would have been out for another 3 months regardless. He came back way too early.
Oh yeah, there was an image after Game 3 of this giant medical equipment.
He couldn't
on his leg.
He's hurting, and he chose to come back and risk his entire fucking career.
Do you think he was coaxed though? Do you think he might have been a little bit
coaxed or not coaxed?
Maybe a little
he
forceful.
Still did it
because the big narrative with Kawhi Leonard was that they were trying to force him to play when he knew he wasn't ready.
But he didn't. He played 9 games.
Yeah.
He was pissed off, but he didn't play.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, if that might be, a lot of people are saying, well, holy shit, like at least he tried and all this stuff. Do you think it might have been a little bit of a shot?
To me, even if it was, he's a big boy and he chose to play.
Yeah,
I cannot believe, if anybody... Now, okay, the other side of it is, what if he doesn't get hurt and they fucking win? Then whoever coaxed him to play...
Well, his $100 million goes to $200 million.
Someone coaxed Bob Gainey to play with 2 broken shoulders in '86, and they won. Yeah. So, like, for every story of an athlete doing this, to me, it's like, but back in the day when I remember, like, they said Eric Lindros was coaxed to play. Look, I've been through concussions, bad ones. I love Eric Lindros, but I never really bought that. I could say that. I mean, I don't hold the Canadians accountable. I've been on there for... They fucking fuck me over with my concussion for sure. For sure they handle it the wrong way. But I'm not going to sit here and fucking throw stones at them. I'm the one who decided to play in the end, right? I decided to.
I'm glad I got to ask you that.
It was stupid. And I think looking back, some people probably made the wrong decision, but I was a rookie that really probably shouldn't have been. I had post-concussion syndrome. It was a different situation, but I still don't sit here and blame the Montreal Canadiens, or I would have sued them. I would have.
Yeah.
Right now, I had an issue with the NHL not giving me my, what do they call the baseline testing for my head.
Yeah.
So when I got an injury, I went in and I had nothing to compare it with. That was stupid. And that was a dumb fucking thing, but that was the NHL. It wasn't the Montreal Canadiens, and I don't hold them accountable. Now, of course, a concussion for an 18-year-old is a little bit different, but guys, the fact that he played, and by the way, to get back to it, he might have been. I'm not saying he wasn't. He certainly might have been coerced to some degree.
I guess people do stupid things to try to win too. That's an
the
easy.
fact that he did play.
It's
I
an
just
individual
can't believe it,
compete
guys.
level too, right?
I
It's a guy who
can't
just
believe
wants
it.
to be out there.
Yeah.
He's the guy who he knows he can help this team. He knows the team's in an elimination position, and the question doesn't become like, because he probably would have played 3 weeks ago if someone told him you're clear to play. Like, he probably would have been like, oh, I don't. I mean, guys
But
are playing.
when it's an Achilles, he had to know that he was.
But it was
killing.
also it was a calf injury. It wasn't like the whole time it's been just listed as a calf.
Just like hockey, they say
Listed,
upper
yeah.
body.
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't
totally.
think they're going to say his
But either way,
Achilles is blown.
but either way, I think it's one of those things of, maybe 3 weeks ago he wouldn't have come back, but he was probably watching his team down 3-1, chomping at the bit, just being like, "Give me the okay. I want the
But
okay,"
this is
or
the
whatever.
thing. I'm not questioning that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that I've never in my life
Yeah.
seen a bigger player without a contract come back.
that's-
It'd be like Connor McDavid doing it next season. Like, well, a little bit different. Durant's what, 30? Even more
He's
so.
30.
Durant's
He's
30.
30.
Okay, so he has less than contracts left than McDavid.
Oh, yeah.
So he's 30 years old. He's in the mid prime of it, but he's not in the early prime.
This was his last
So,
payday. This
yeah.
was going to be a long-term
This was-
contract.
yeah,
Last
this was his
payday is going to be
retirement.
max, whatever it is, $30 million a year, max.
Yeah.
Right? He's going to max out, and if he just sat, he was maxing out, and everybody knew it. It was a race to see who was going to get him.
Yeah.
We were talking, even though he's injured now, we were talking down the road about Kevin Durant, where he's going to play next year. Now, I mean, you might be thinking 2020, 2021 if you do get him.
Yeah.
Like an Achilles injury for a basketball player, I can't think much worse than a fucking right arm injury to a fucking right arm javelin thrower. Really. I can't think of much fucking worse.
Yeah.
And he put himself right in there in the line of fire. And hats off to Kevin fucking Durant. And you know what? The thing is, I'm going to say about this series, the last thing, I love both teams. I think both of them got spunk. Draymond Green plays as hard out there and is as much of a pest as Brad Marchand is.
I was going to say, you
Yeah.
can't say you like Draymond Green if you don't like Brad Marchand. You're not allowed. I'm not letting you do
I know,
it.
yeah. And I could kind of almost sense that.
Because
but
they're there, man.
it's
Terry,
great to watch.
Terry, how many right arm javelin players do you know by name?
I know, right?
That was where you went. Not pitchers.
I lost myself there. I had to come
Not a
up with
fucking
something.
pitcher or quarterback.
I had nothing planned. I had to come up with a comparison.
That was a good one. I like that one.
But,
I like
yeah.
that.
So in fucking summarization here, I'm going to say that I quickly forgave the Toronto fans. I think it was a unifying example of class cheering him off. And I don't know. It was a surprising move that KD played for me as I've seen in recent sports. And hats off to one of the most unselfish moves I've seen in the modern era.
Yeah, it was again like more than anything, being a contract year.
I think
it's just insanity that like a guy faced an athlete in the modern climate of pro sports is going to do that in a contract year.
Yeah, man.
And
You do stupid things to win.
Like,
Yeah,
guys,
you
it's
know.
one thing to have a 2-on-0 and shoot at the empty net, right? And not pass it to your buddy or get a point on it. It's one thing to, like, make those decisions, or it's one thing to, like, shoot it from your own end and get an icing, and then they tie it up, and it's like, those are selfish moves,
did you just
right?
take a dig at Mark Messier?
No, in the Russian World Junior a couple of years ago, a guy fucking fired it from his own end.
Oh, yeah.
And all he had to do was gain the line, and it came right back and Canada not only tied it up, but they scored.
It's the drive for 5 year, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
remember
that's
that.
what popped into my head because it was the most
That's-
selfish move. But I mean,
I
the
can
kids
remember
are 18,
watching
19.
that, yeah.
It's like this year when the guy Sellied. I consider it a little bit different than the World Cup, but I got pissed off at him in the World Juniors. But I think he will learn from that.
Yeah.
You know, the captain there when he Sellied and then he
Yeah.
hammed up an injury. But anyway,
Fuck, the captain of the Canadian team
I
this
can't
year was
remember.
he took a bunch of heat this year during the World Juniors just because.
yeah.
He's
And I agree.
Vancouver
I agree with the
Canucks
heat that he took. I just think
Yeah.
he'll learn from it.
I think so too.
I agree with that. What were we first talking about there?
I don't fucking know anymore.
can't even remember.
We were talking about
Durant, the Raptors
something
fans
about a
and the
2-on-0.
fan reaction.
You were talking about not passing on a 2-on-0.
Yeah. So there's examples of selfishness and examples of or passing it. Let's say unselfishness, passing it on a 2-on-0, so your buddy gets a goal. But I've never seen anything like this. Like, this is putting your whole fucking $100 million on the line. Literally, you could say hundreds, really, if he's that. Durant's 30. His next payday is going to be max. I think the max in basketball is $30 million a year.
There's also there's a salary cap situation
hundreds.
where you can overpay. So there's a luxury tax. So I mean,
he's turning down just for risking it. Now, not that I'll ever think the fucking guy will be hurt up.
Fucking win.
And that's the point, I guess.
One thing I will say, while we're still in the basketball thing,
but isn't KD doing isn't it KD that's doing the new fucking Space Jam movie? Isn't coming back from this injury going to be what is the Michael Jordan coming back from playing baseball?
Maybe
in the Space Jam sequel?
Maybe he's creating his own 30 for 30.
Max Comtois, by the way. Max Comtois.
Thank you. I think that a reason why everything is so overblown with the fan reaction to him getting hurt is that when you're a team that's down 3-2, that is as juicy as it gets for whiteboard material. Whiteboard material, that is as rich as you're ever gonna get.
What's funny is I immediately thought the same, but it can go either way on that. Like you just said, if he's pissed because someone coerced him to play,
the only reason I
then
thought
you're
that,
almost like. But no. Yeah, I'm not.
The only reason I thought that is because of the Kawhi situation, where there was a lot of head-to-head. And once again, I'm not going to pretend that I'm a huge basketball expert. This is from what I pick up from a few people I chat with.
You're pretty bang on. It could go both ways, I guess. I think that it'll be like, let's win for KD. But if KD's pissed off and someone really made him play, and I'm wrong on the whole unselfish thing,
it can blow up.
It can blow up in your face. I think though it will. I think it'll be a very unified Golden State team and fan base.
Ooh, I
think it's gonna be hard. I think we're looking at 7.
We're talking about how crazy sports arenas have been earlier in Toronto and just the city itself. Game 6 in the Oracle. It's their last game. Win
in the Oracle,
win. You get to go for one more. Lose, well, it's the last game of the year. That place is going to be on wheels, as we say.
Yeah. And on that note, because we're almost done, before I forget, because I've thought about it 3 times since we've been here.
Yeah.
Guys, my plan, I haven't talked this over with you guys, but the Growlers just won, so I figure I'd give them a bit of a break. And 2 of the boys are on Team Canada Ball Hockey. Got to go over to fucking play in Europe today, actually. So
what a game, by the way, TR.
Yeah, I hear you.
You were up along, weren't you?
You were up. Really, for every reason, I wish the fuck I was here to watch it. But I feel still part of it, having gone to the first couple games and watching along on Twitter and being so proud of the boys. So what we're going to do, I'm going to shoot for Adam Party soon as well, but I'm giving them their space for this week and maybe even next.
They're all probably still hungover.
But some of them listen to this.
What a fucking party they had, man.
And,
I tell you, I went to the game. I went to the game. I went out afterwards. I kept it kind of sensible. I just went to my same watering hole. And the next day, I didn't have to work. And so me and a friend went over breakfast. And I went into the place, and it was a local little pub on my street. And I walk in, and it's about maybe 90% of the team. And I'm just thinking, late night or somehow miraculously early morning.
Both. They had to be up for promotion shit in the morning.
Yeah.
It
so
was a lot of the fellas were on
miraculous.
the same. A lot of the fellas were in the same clothes that I saw them celebrating on the ice. We'll leave it at that.
Sure.
We'll leave it at that.
You were saying though.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, we're not. I totally want to acknowledge all that.
Oh yeah.
But rather than
to the
repeat
boys.
ourselves, I'm going to talk about a lot of that trip. And we'll get Trevor Murphy's a buddy of mine too, and a guy behind the scenes that doesn't get enough credit down there. So I'm planning on having a few of them, and maybe even having an episode or 2 towards that. We'll really concentrate on all that. But just for the fans out here that don't know what I'm talking about, the East Coast Hockey League, or the ECHL, just wrapped up, and our very own Newfoundland Growlers won the Kelly Cup versus Toledo, and
in their inaugural season.
Yeah,
first season, and a couple of great. There's 4 Newfoundlanders on the team, 5, many more involved behind the scenes. But for a guy like Adam Party, it was his last game, and Zach O'Brien was the MVP. 2 very and they all. I mean, Melindy's as important. He's the captain, and Marcus Power was probably the most underrated guy, not only on the team but in the league. So they all did. All the Newfoundlanders.
It's Party's last game.
Party announced his retirement.
Yeah,
did he? Okay.
He announced his retirement last week. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Day after.
I think he knew the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I talked to him this year just a couple times.
I had
don't
my
bring it up much,
suspicions. I had my suspicions.
And another big shout out because it was great to have him. Because I saw him at I went down to the big rally they had after the parade. I missed the parade because apparently it was like really short. But I got down to see like the rally on George Street that they had, and it was really great to hear Brian Rogers, who his name comes up. His name comes up in the interview that we do with Jason MacDonald, but as your former broadcast partner,
Didn't know that.
But yeah, I mean he's been doing this shit for a long time. He's been with pro hockey in Newfoundland from day one with the Baby Leafs coming all the way up through, and it was really great for him to finally be able to be part of a championship and get to call a championship alongside Chris Ballard, and it was just it was great for them to have such a great year for it.
I think, guys, it's shaping up to be, in my mind, one of the most interesting sports years I remember. Remember Tiger Woods won this year.
Yeah.
If there was no other sports story this season, Tiger Woods has won. Now we're going to get, if St. Louis wins, I know you don't want this, but if they do, it'll add to another unique, the Newfoundland Growlers, right? It'll add to another, and for personally, I don't mind throwing it in September, we won the Masters World Ball Hockey Championship. So it seems to me, on a personal level, yes, but...
I mean, we won the Kilgallen.
Yeah. I'm not knocking any of that. Just personally, I'm still one of the best wins of my life. I'll say it. It's all fucking relative. It's the same to me if we won the Calder Cup in the A as if we won the ball hockey, and it was a great experience. But right since, and I'm talking personally from there, but if you go back even just this year, since January, there's been a lot of great stories. And within the year, I forget, a girl won the Canadian Open last year, for a Canadian girl.
Oh,
can't remember her name. It's a calendar year.
The golfer, you mean?
Yeah,
the Canadian golf. I can't.
Yeah. Sorry, the Canadian golfer.
Because I also
and there's a couple
tennis
of great
players.
tennis players.
Yeah.
Right, and then you get a record number of Canadians in the NBA.
Yeah.
I'm spitballing here off the top of my head. These are all major stories that haven't happened before. Oh, even on a local level, the St. John's Edge make the final.
Yeah.
Right, Carl English gets hurt, comes back. I mean, that story is only a year and a half old. It seems old, but the St. John's Edge, a pro basketball team in Newfoundland, are averaging almost 4,000 fans a game. I mean, holy fuck.
And
What an
great
environment
games.
down
It's so
there,
fun to
too.
go down.
Yeah, it's
Totally.
a lot of fun.
Are we forgetting, and let's say even in recent history on a local level, like we won the Briar 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and in
I
the
was
hunt,
down there for that, eh?
Yeah, me
That
too.
was
Like it's
wild.
been some while. I was in Trinidad for that.
It's just it's been like if you want unique look at, even I'll say, people might argue with me because I brought this up the other day. We're having a few beers in Toronto, and I brought up even New England. Someone's like, "Well, that's not new." I'm like, "It is though."
Yeah.
They're just, by them winning. It's not like Boston winning now and the Bruins, because that's a really successful team to get 2 cups in a decade. But to win this many, what's it, Brady, like 5 or 6? Or
He's
43. Like,
Yeah.
to me, this story, and he's almost,
former Montreal Expo.
yeah, really.
Hold on. He's 43 years old?
He's at least my age. I'm 42. Yeah, he is. So
fuck.
for him to keep doing that again, there's 30 fucking teams, or 32.
He's 41. He's the same age as you, but his birthday's in August.
Okay, so I knew it. He's a 77. So he's still doing that. I'm still playing senior hockey in fucking Newfoundland, and people think that's a big deal. Can you imagine
Winning the Super Bowl.
Can you
6 of
imagine
them.
that shit? Holy fuck.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going, there's only so many. Like, Chara's one thing to me, and that really, but he changed his game. I guess he's a stay-at-home defenseman. It helps if you're 7 feet tall. I can kind of see how it happened. To be honest, Jagger impressed me more by getting 20 goals when he was still 45 or whatever the fuck it was. But
was 51
for
then.
Tom Brady's, really, for Tom Brady to still be doing it. I mean, love him or hate him, I'm kind of impartial. I'm not a New England Patriots fan, but I looked at it this year and said, this is incredible. And you go down the line, almost every sport has something that's happened in a lot of those categories, like tennis, basketball, and hockey, ball hockey. Canada is going up with a bullet. Specifically, not that I'm into either one of them crazy amount, basketball and tennis.
Yeah.
Which is great to see. And I think a lot of times, you guys remember a couple years ago when there was a big uprise, we didn't have enough people representing the Olympics, and people were questioning, where we were spending our money. Well, look, I don't know about Olympics, but our programs in Canada are second to none. And the only thing I think that got to fucking shape up is soccer. For some reason, we fucking suck. We're rated like 200th out of 180 countries. I don't even know how it's
I
possible.
remember,
So weird,
you
'cause
brought this
soccer's-
up. You brought this
did.
up before.
Soccer's
yeah.
been so big in Canada for such a long time. Like I remember
and
it
they're
being
just not good on a
I
national
just-
level.
yeah,
Someone,
like,
someone gave TR a reason on Twitter that made sense though.
No, I know what was happening was we were here and it was during a playoff game and we had the game on. It was the Pittsburgh Islanders game. We had the game on the TV, and when it was over, soccer came on. And then while that was happening, you were like watching a bit of the soccer game, and that's what happened.
Because the last 2
Yeah.
years, I consciously got into soccer. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't understand all those teams, and then I started watching the Premiership and then the top 20, I think it is. And I like the idea of it, how at the end of the season, like the first couple of teams in the B division go up to the A, and the last couple of teams go down.
Relegated.
And then I love the whole FA Cup thing where anybody can play anybody. Like Mount Pearl Blades can play the Toronto Maple Leafs in relativity.
Yeah.
And the odd in soccer, the odd time, someone like gets one shot and it's a penalty kick and they win. I love those storylines, so I got into it. I said I'm going to try to teach myself. And that being said, there's a 16-year-old Canadian kid in soccer as well. He plays for Chelsea, or he's going to. He played his first couple games this year. So there is, there are individual. I forget his name. There's individual stories, but for some reason, we cannot get better at soccer. And I mean, we're behind like teams that, again, I don't want to sit here and judge all these countries, but there's countries like Ethiopia that probably, we definitely have more money to put into our program. So I'm not sure. I know you make the argument, well, there's only a ball that's needed. I know, man, but we got training facilities. It's the only mystery to me is why we suck at at soccer, but everything else we're getting better at.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a mandate from TR Canada. Get better at soccer.
It's 20.
Yeah.
When's the next fucking World Cup? Do better. I'll tell you what. We're gonna take a minute. We're gonna listen to a word from our friends at Miller Lite, who are good friends of the show and a sponsor, of course. Then we're gonna come back and we're gonna listen to our interview with Jason MacDonald. And then when that's over, we'll come back and we'll have a chat about the last couple things before I go stress out about this game.
Vitals check, Mike.
It's fine. It's down. It's at 80. That's up, I think, from where it was last time I looked. Anyway, here's a word from the fine people at Miller. Wait, I got to double check because I can't remember. I don't want to hit the
We
wrong.
already did head check.
I don't want to hit the wrong button here. I think it's this one.
Here's a few things to know when opening an ice-cold Miller Lite. They brew their beer to 90 calories and 3 grams of carbs per 355 milliliter serving. And they also brew for great taste. It's this great Pilsner taste that's made Miller Lite a favorite for our beer drinkers everywhere. Miller Lite, 90 calories, 3 grams of carbs. It's Miller time. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome to Third Man In podcast this week my good buddy, former Abbey Centennial, Plater, Red Wing, Storm, Canadian national team member, St. John Flame, Manitoba Moose, Orlando Solar Bear, Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguin, New York Ranger, St. John's Maple Leaf, and Providence Bruin. Jason MacDonald. J-Mac, how the hell are you, buddy?
TR, long time no see, buddy.
Long
Thanks for having me
time.
on.
I think this might be the longest we've gone without seeing each other. You're in Wilkes-Barre right now, right?
I am. I'm in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and beautiful day down here.
I see.
And just hanging out today.
With your son.
Yeah.
I remember your son's name is Jagger. I've lost track of time. How old is Jagger now?
Jagger is actually, he was 12 in March, and I've always been back and forth, but it's probably been a little more than 5 or 6 years. I kind of flipped my residence and more so down here in the last little while, TR. So I haven't been up in the Maritimes myself either to cross paths with yourself or any of the boys lately.
No, but I gather, just seeing some pictures here and there, that you're having a good time and you're definitely getting better weather.
I gotta ask, Jagger, named after Mick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. But actually, you know what? To tell you the truth, one of your good guys' buddies is Harold Druping's young fellow's called Jagger, and I think I actually stole it off of him, to tell you the truth.
Because around the same time.
Oh, okay,
I think Drukes'
okay.
kid is like 13.
And
or something.
Jagger's mother loved that name, and that's actually where we did get it. So
Don't let Druken know you stole it, though. You might have to settle something.
During the 04-05 season, which we will get to. the chaos that was the St. John's Maple Leafs.
Oh, I'm logged on here for this.
Oh, yeah.
I heard chaos. Okay,
I was the
go.
podcast guy. And it was. There's some good stories there, but we'll get there. What we're going to do with J-Mac, and just to preface this with, I guess any long-time listeners, that would have been 3 months. We started in January.
Dude, this is episode 20. Come on
Yeah,
now.
true. So
20,
but people would know that I've had Steve Parsons on here, and we've also had David Ling on here. So before we start, Jason MacDonald is a real good friend of mine. He's real good friends with David Ling. They grew up somewhat together in Charlottetown. They're around the same age. I think Linger's 1 year older. And they also, Steve Parsons. So remember we talked about that St. Paddy's Day massacre with Steve Parsons and how crazy it was, and he set like the record with 60-something minutes on one play? Well, Jason was the other guy on his team with his shirt off in that brawl. Jason equally has a story to tell, and we'll get to that. But there are, so point being, as you're listening to these shows, Turan Sandwith was on here. They played against each other for years. There are a lot of commonalities here and a lot of parallels, and we're going to intersect a lot. I find a lot now on the show we're starting to intersect stories, which is a good thing. It shows you how small the hockey world is.
I was going to say, it shows a definite sense of community with guys that played in the same times and up and down the ranks.
Especially in our era, because our era was one of those. Mac will be, like I said, we got a lot in common. Mac was the type, best year in the A, 25 goals, fucking 283 penalty minutes. And I'll get to that too. But just Mac's one of those kind of players. Numbers that you would say, how in the fuck did you not get up to the NHL immediately? But anyway, we're going to start way back. Because you're from Charlottetown, right, Jason?
Yes. Yep.
So you played...
Born and raised Charlottetown, and like you said, the Charlottetown Abbeys, coached by Forbes Kennedy, the great Forbes Kennedy. I played for him, Terry, when I was 15 years old, and actually, just to throw in a Newfoundland, we played in the finals against the Avalon. You guys probably know the name better than I, back in 1989, but that's where we had our provincial finals. That's where it started, with the Charlottetown Abbeys.
Wow. I'm looking at it, J-Mac, so 35 points, 221 minutes as a 15-year-old. Dude, honestly, like sometimes, because I did that and I thought it was really unique, and since I was so drunk on my own story that this has been like the third or fourth guest that played as a 14 or 15-year-old and had 200 minutes, J-Mac. You must have gotten right at it. Now, I know with Forby as a coach, and especially growing up in Charlottetown, you guys knocked around with some tough guys. Was that a conscious move to get a lot of penalty minutes, or were you just pissed off?
Well, you know what? Not really. I mean, I was a second-year band playing, and I mean, back in those days, you always hear the stories about the fighting and this and that. So obviously you're subconscious of it. But I mean, I definitely didn't go in wanting to do all that. But and then you hear your name thrown around the OHL draft and this and that, and you think you have to do more of it. So it's definitely became part of my game, I guess, right out of the gate. And Forby didn't discourage any of that back in those days.
How was he as a coach, man? For those of you that don't know, we could have a whole 10 episodes on Forbes Kennedy stories, and maybe we'll get into that sometime when we'll have my dad back on the show. He's one of my dad's fucking heroes. But, what was it like? I know it's a general question, but, playing for him.
And I look back nowadays at all the different coaches that we had and stuff, and Forby takes the cake as far as uniqueness, because he taught you to be a man. Linger and I always talk about it, this and that, laughing and stuff, but he taught you to be a man, and he taught you to stand up for yourself, be a good team player, and all those things. We weren't so much systems and any of that talk back in those days, so we kept the game. You kept the game being taught to you simple. So, I mean, Forby and his sons, Mike and Gary, they're really good friends of mine and like family. So, I mean, Forby did nothing but help my career and punch it off in the right direction, for sure. And Linger, I'll probably speak for Linger too, and a lot of other people.
Yeah, no, I get the sense of, for those that don't know, I still go to PEI. I'm going to go in there again in a month for a golf tournament. Great people, very similar to Newfoundlanders when we get to know each other, especially at that time. We didn't only identify as Atlantic Canadians, but we all threw the mitts a little bit, and it brings you tighter together.
There's one thing I've noticed. We've had two PEI tough guys on now, like, you know, guys that could just munch minutes, and they're always so friendly on the phone. David Ling and now Jason yourself. It's almost like I can't picture this guy starting a fight. Like, you know, maybe he can finish it.
Well,
but...
J-Mac has bipolar disorder, so by the end of the interview, he'll fucking flip out or some shit. But, you know, don't speak too soon. I'm only kidding. You're right. But the thing is, though, Chuck, I find, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Jason, but we always, like, the first of all, there's a commonality and an appreciation and respect amongst guys that throw the mitts. And we weren't on one end or the other. We were in the middle. All three of us were middleweights. So we mid to heavy too. We'd fight the heavies. So I think you really have an understanding when you do that. And now it's an appreciation for the era. But at the time, you know, and even now, to be from Atlantic Canada, like J-Mac, this is true. The first thing Jason or David Ling ever said to me on the ice was, "Hey, you're from Newfoundland." Hey, he said, "I'm from PEI." That was at the CHL All-Star game before I fucking burned him. But the same thing, and you're not going to believe this, guys, but Jason, Frenchie they called you then, Jason played in Fredericton the year before me, but I didn't know him. And I swear to God, we fought in St. John in 99, 2000, maybe 98, 99. Jason and I fought, and that's the first thing he said to me. He said, "Oh, you're Terry Wright from Newfoundland." I said, yeah. You're Linger's buddy from PEI. He said, "Yeah, I guess we got to go." I kind of got the tap to go anyway. But that is. Your props.
Yeah, you got the best of me that time too, right in front of the bench, I must say.
Well, we slipped, I think, is what happened. I ended up on top.
Well, yes, you're being friendly. I'll say that. You slipped. You're always quick to get the mitts off and get them going, buddy. All right,
yeah, well, I wasn't going to let you get them off first.
Anybody the chance to get one off quick, and I like that. You taught me a lesson, actually.
Well, and that once it's game on, it's game on. There's a fine line between suckering a guy and you've both agreed and your gloves are already off.
Far from I got to master that myself as I got going on through. So.
Well, that was rather early in our careers. And the other thing, and point being, the same thing when I fought Cam Russell. He said, "You're a Maritimer, eh?" And whatever it is, like when you're a Maritimer in that league or in those leagues in the pro ranks, you really, really, you feel like it's a tight community. There's only so many of us. I don't know. There's probably only 20 or 30.
Respect for each other because you know how hard it is. Not to come out of the Maritimes. Not saying. But we got a battle out of here, right? It's not like you're downtown Oshawa or Peterborough and they're coming to watch you every night. They come on a word and they might come out twice a weekend to see you. So you got to be tons of flying.
Yeah, you better have a good game at the tournaments because no one's flying to Charlottetown to watch you. You know what I mean?
They're not.
I remember thinking that, and that was a big thing. Like Dad would pat me on the back, and each time I went to a tournament on the mainland, it was like it was an unwritten and unsaid thing. But it was almost as if, this is your chance, obviously. So, no one's going to come watch you fucking play in Grand Falls kind of thing.
Yeah.
And nothing against Grand Falls. Okay, so from there, you go. Grand Falls wins.
You just had to get it in there.
Yeah, and I'm one of those. I say Grand Falls.
I still do too, but
that's it. I know. Yeah. I'm only offending a small percentage of people because
that's true,
so fuck them. It's Grand Falls to me. But listen, J-Mac, you go up. Yeah. So what was the end of North Bay? Did you get drafted into North Bay Centennials
Yeah.
Okay.
I did. When I got drafted that year, I went 7th overall in the OHL draft to Burt Templeton.
Jesus, I didn't know you went 7th, dude. 7th overall.
7th. Wow. Yeah.
Oh my, okay. I'm listening.
Overall.
You just gained more respect than you already had in my books. Keep going.
To North Bay, Burt Templeton. That was I have lots of Burt Templeton stories.
Yeah, I heard him from Brad Brown. There you go, boys. Brad Brown was another guest of ours. Played with J-Mac up there, and Burt Templeton.
That's right, Brown. He played in the same team, but he probably said, Burt used to sit at the back of the bus with a cooler full of beer and just abuse your game critique your game all the way back.
Did he really?
Oh no.
Was he chirping like the guy? I think Brad said he was like the guys on the Muppet Show, Staldorf and Adler.
Right out of the gate, he told me I was the worst first rounder that he ever took.
Wow.
Right up halfway up the bus, you're sitting up there thinking about PEI, right? Trying to get the homesickness over, and Burt was just filling you full of confidence.
It's like that old gag. It's like, well, we'll tear you down, rebuild you, and then tear you down again. And if there's time before you get drafted in the NHL, we'll rebuild you one last time.
So
poor Jamie Crusoe, he was a whipping boy for Burt too. I remember God bless Birdie's gone, but I mean, he was a really good man. That was just the way those guys were back then, as you know.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I've heard. I mean, that.
Right.
You know, Mike Keenan's a good guy. It was just a different. It was just a different way. Like the only one again I came across that crossed the line into being an asshole was Michel Therrien, but you know he was following. In his defense, that was a strategy. It wasn't always a reaction. He didn't react like an asshole. Mike would plan it. He would plan to get in your head. But I mean, he was taking cues from other coaches that weren't quite as bad. Now that being said, so J-Mac as a 16-year-old though, I'm looking at your points. That's not bad. 57 games.
Not bad. Underage, not too bad.
No, 27. Again, very similar. My first year, I had 33 points. I played 10 more games. You had 57 games. 27 points, 126 minutes, also through the mitts. So then why the next year? You almost got a point a game the next year and you get traded to Owen Sound. Did you ask for that?
No, you know, North Bay was going after Memorial Cup. Everybody was trying to beat the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds back then, right? Ted Nolan's team. So I got traded to a younger Owen Sound.
Yeah, they won it, didn't they? They won it in 94, did they? Sorry.
Yeah, Sault Ste. Marie won it in 94. I think they North Bay didn't advance past the third round.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry.
I went to Owen Sound, which probably a blessing in disguise, lots of ice time, and was able to have a couple good 18, 19-year-old seasons, you know. So.
Well, I mean, 18, a couple of good ones. Like, I'm looking at this again, J-Mac. 56 games, 92, 93. 89 points. Like, again, 56 fucking games. Right, like the year, my best year, I had 110 points, but I played 70 games. That's 14. Not that I'm comparing. I'm saying we're similar players,
you know what, I'll tell you,
and I know what it's like.
Behind this, and it's funny because my third year, my left winger was Andrew Burnett.
Right? Yeah, I remember him from Portland and Minnesota.
Burnett is now. So I mean, nobody could get the puck off Bruno, especially on the power play. And I had a lot of power play goals that year. And then I remember Detroit saying, you know, you're going to be able to put these numbers up again because everybody's kind of saying that Andrew Burnett, you know, people can score with Andrew Burnett, obviously, and power play, blah, blah, blah. But I did as a 19-year-old.
Fucking 55.
Was able to get 55 with, you know, two guys that were just slingers. So, yeah. But then went to the American League and found out how hard it is to score at the next couple of levels, right?
Oh, fuck yeah. And you had some prospects play with too, were Wayne Primo. Look at this. So, but Mac, this is the other thing. 177 minutes to go with 116 points that year, 55 goals.
Yeah.
I mean, these are numbers that wouldn't surprise me if the next season you started in the NHL. They really would.
Yeah, I got some games down with Detroit in exhibition games, and I was right down to the final few guys as they keep around, right? But I got a couple exhibition games. Those were the years they were doing well. And I just got down to Glens Falls and Adirondack, and my off ice started to be a little shady, not too bad, but I just like to have a good time, right? And I think maybe that hampered a little bit, you know.
I love the honesty. It probably did, J-Mac, but we all...
what it is, right? So...
Back there, don't you remember in those days... Like people just saying, like I remember putting it on the wall, like PH squared, man. Party hard, play hard, party hard. And it was like, you know, especially if you were a guy that dropped the mitts.
I like that you're starting party hard first, and then you wait. No, I should correct it. Play hard, party hard.
Play hard, party hard,
play hard. But it was really like, and now there's a limit. I'm not saying everybody should be fucking shit canned all the time. I do miss. Right. I think the game needs more people hanging out and having a beer instead of playing Fortnite the night before games and shit. You know, because I mean, you know what I mean. Like there were also times, J-Mac. You know, you go out to the keg, you have a meal, you have 2 or 3 beer, you feel good, you're with the boys. You and I did overdo it many a night, and I'm definitely not condoning all of that stuff. But it was almost part of it, wasn't it, back then? Like I remember even with the other team. Like looking at it and going, well, if enough guys over there stay out and enough of us stay out, and you know, you just pounding rum and cokes. It was always it was usually if you were with the boys, it was one thing, and I mean almost every night going with the boys. I don't remember ever staying in and just doing nothing. When I say with the boys, having a meal and a beer or two. If you didn't have a game the next day and you happened to be in a city. I don't know, like Wilkes-Barre or whatever. Like I remember going out. You happen to get there 2 nights before, and you go out, and the other team goes out too. And you're pounding booze. It was almost like a rite of passage.
I've got a question for both of you now. Who was your hardest coach on that? Like, who was the coach that was the most against that?
You go first, Jamie.
Well, it's the very first team, and I mean, I played for, he was Newell Brown. He still coaches. I don't like to be saying names, but I mean, I remember this one incident that got myself into hot water, and I mean, looking back, the guy was obviously just doing his job, trying to keep a bunch of guys in check. But I was in Portland, Maine for 2 weekends against the Pirates, and like TR was saying, Portland's a nice little town to go out and
oh, it's beautiful.
On a Friday, Saturday night. So we sauntered down there on a Friday. I remember Newell was sitting up in the lobby on a Friday and caught a few for us coming in and kind of, let the older guys go, but really kind of leaned on myself and a couple other young guys.
Okay.
So this was on a Friday night after the game, but Saturday night we ended up maybe sweeping the weekend. So we went back downtown again. I think we played somewhere on Sunday, but I thought I'd amp her up again on Saturday night, test the waters, and strolled in late night, and Newell was setting up somewhere around the corner, and I got plucked again.
Oh, that's
twice on the same weekend on the old on the curfew. So I actually went down to a little spin down to Toledo for about a month. That was to get my attention, right?
I was wondering why. Okay, I was going to say to you, your numbers in the A are good. Even that year, you only played 43 games. You get 22 points, 99 minutes. You were on your way to a decent year, but that was why the Toledo.
So I was setting up. I did my homework here.
But still,
he didn't really, college coach. His favorites a little bit. The CHL guy from the Maritimes maybe would like to drink a little bit much. I don't think was his favorite, right?
The other thing is, though, J-Mac, and I will say this, because J-Mac and I both played with guys who had problems. We were right, like, and even now, like I might go 3 weeks, often more, without drinking. So for me, it was going out with the boys. It was definitely trying to pick up women. It was definitely part of it. So anything that happened in the club,
guessed.
definitely. Well, it's part of it. I'm not even trying.
Like,
well, J-Mac, I'm not even trying to be Mr. fucking Rico Suave when I say that. I don't know if that wasn't that everybody's goal. Like, we would go out. Like, the point of the night was, if we're gonna get drunk, would be, try to find some women or what. I'm not saying every guy. Like, I was single. I have nothing to complain.
That's every guy, not even hockey players, I think.
Yeah, right. So I remember I used to say that. But you and I, and much more like it. I can't think of a guy who really went to war and fought. And what, like, my role was almost to keep that line. Like, they expected me on most teams because I like to drink them from Newfoundland, and they knew that I'm used to it and I might not go over the line. Like, I wasn't a substance abuser. I was a party animal. And, like, if, you know what I mean? If there was a party, I'll be the one to dance on the table. Guys, I'm going to get these drinks for us. I'm going to go on stage and I'm going to sing and I'm going to get all these girls over to dance with us and sit with us. It was about fun.
But you're not sitting home alone in your apartment getting fucking soused by yourself, right?
No, that was never the case. And I'm not saying it wasn't with others, but I never Mac told that story. I never really even got nabbed other than that Michel Therrien time where he skated us, and I told the story last time.
Yeah.
And Mac was kind of the same. Like, we really, really treaded a line, but in a way, we were expected to take the boys out. Like, I played on numerous teams and so did you, man. I remember the respect you had in Wilkes-Barre, Jason, where the coach had, like, if it was a night out, he'd come down and give me $2,000 and say, make sure everybody has a good time. We were all set.
Wow.
And I remember that. No, but not, in other words,
I used to
make
be
sure
in charge
we have a team meal.
When we used to go to the Rock too, sorry to cut you off there. Glenn Patrick, he used to love going up to St. John's. He'd be just clicking his heels together, getting off the plane.
I'm loving this. I just rearranged my seating at the notion of Glenn Patrick loving coming to Newfoundland. So thank you for bringing this up.
He did, yeah. So he used to Terry's point, I'd always be in charge, make sure the boys had a good time. So
I think most of the time, most of the time, I think that was kind of expected, and there were times, like you just said, where, and that was maybe going to happen. I think now you'd probably be fired off the team. There was just there was way more leash back then. Like, I remember guys, and I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to get into it and say who, but Jason and I both saw a teammate of ours. I won't say when, I won't say where. We saw him doing crack. Like, and I've seen crack cocaine twice in my life. I could not believe it came out, and it did. And this guy, went in and he ended up getting the help he needed, and he certainly turned his life around. I won't get into it, and he's been very open and honest, or I wouldn't try to sell him out. But that sort of thing happened, and so Mac and I also had to try to lead. Here we are, like almost as hypocrites, because you got to go to those guys and like, you can't party at all. I'm going to go out and have tequila tonight and try to bang a chick. You know what I mean? Like so. But you make sure to go to a movie, but there was that part of it too, and a lot of that stuff. And now crack is completely not normal. I'm not saying it is.
Yeah.
It was one of the only times in my life I ever came across it. But there were people amongst us that you often didn't see that had major league problems, right? And that sort of thing often comes out afterwards.
Boys would deal with it, They would just deal with it because they would think of it as being weakness, or they couldn't do this or that. And that's why you have a lot of these, a lot of our buddies or a lot of teammates coming out with a lot of issues now, and a lot of people reaching out for help. Really, it's and it, like you said, it's probably not as much now prevalent with the young kids because they're spent a lot of time. The scouts and the organization spend a lot more time on them because they realize that from years before. The tail end of our Terry, the tail end of when we were playing. They're basically UFC guys that are trained fighters out there at the end of it with skates on.
Yeah. Oh my God!
That's what it is. If they're missing you with a punch, they're coming through with an elbow.
Oh yeah, man! Imagine, and we had to go all those guys, J-Mac. I often say it. Like we were out there like trying to pop goals, and like at the same time, in my head, like I wasn't thinking like defend myself. I was thinking like, okay, next shift I might have to fight Mark Major. I might have to fight Frank Bialowas, or I might have to fight Steve McLaren. Like those are unbelievably scary thoughts at times, and you got to still go out and the toughest part of all of it, I often said, like, I didn't mind taking a punch. I found it hard in other areas, like going in front of the net with big, tough defensemen, because they'd let everything go, J-Mac. They'd let everything go. I mean, what was the hardest part of the game for you? What did you find? I don't know, the hitting, the fighting, what?
Yeah, to your point, the same thing. I mean, the fight in the actual, when you get out there and did it, it wasn't, the lead up wasn't fun, right? Definitely the night before when you were,
the night
and you get to sleep if you, and you're thinking that maybe, like you say, you have McLaren and Trevor Gillies and Godard, maybe. If they're not in a good mood, that they're out there doing something, right? And to your point, we're middleweight. That was middleweight, but I didn't want any of those guys taking liberties either. Fuck it, right? I'd either try to sucker them out there or do something. It was like, but that would make you nervous the night before.
It would, and then a lot of the time, you'd have to make the first move. I've often said to people, like, why did you go after Frank Bialowas? I'm like, because I didn't want to wait for him to come after me. And, it's not always poking the bear and pissing the bear off. Sometimes it's poking the bear to show a bit of dominance and balls, like, because those guys respected that, that's actually an interesting perspective, and I was going to ask that a little bit later, but right now, what I want to get into, J-Mac, is the year before I met you. Now, the next season after all this, right? You go to Freddie, right?
Yeah, Freddie was. I got in that trouble on Portland, like I was telling you about, and actually Detroit traded me to Fredericton just for cash that year. Just basically, it wasn't even a player involved at the end of the season. But I went up there actually and turned it around and had my best numbers.
Did you ever?
In the American League, even 13 years later? Those were my best sets of numbers when I went up there.
22 goals.
You were a first rounder. I played right wing, and you look at the game now. You were a right winger. Blah 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 blah. But and that's how I got to the Canadian national team. Andy Murray, who was actually out there, is where I went from Fredericton that year, because after those numbers, Terry, I couldn't get a job.
It's amazing. 22 goals and 189 penalty minutes. That, to me, I don't even know how you weren't battling for that. That's like a third line in the NHL right there. Like, that's what I want. If I'm looking at the American League, I want guys 20 goals, 200 minutes, anywhere around it. I'm inviting them all to camp to play on my third line. And you didn't get an invite?
That was probably the best year I had, and I often tell people, okay, when I went up to the Rangers 7 years later, I was a better player. I was still the same, but I wouldn't say that out, but I was a better player. I had better years before that, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I was still working my bag off and doing what you had to do, but the numbers and what you would think looking at it, to our point, it's all, right place, right time, this and that, but it took Jimmy Schoenfeld and Sather liking what I was doing down in Hartford at 28 to give me my games,
And we'll get there, and I love that you brought up Jimmy Schoenfeld, senior. That's my dad's old teammate. That's the orange peel comment, boys.
Oh,
I picked up on the name right away.
Max got...
Shoney was a good guy. I like Shoney. He was our GM in Hartford that year,
and gave you an opportunity.
I had 2 really good fights with Trevor Gillies that year out of the gate. And
Jesus, J-Mac, he's in my...
Too many. Too many.
In my new book, I've been hit... I said, like, what's the 3 hardest punches? It probably would have been Domi, but he didn't hit me straight on as much. So let's just ignore the Ty Domi, the obvious one. And my three are Ryan Vandenbush, Mark Morrow, who played back when you did. He's my age, but you remember that fucking guy. Actually played with you. And fucking Trevor Gillies. Trevor Gillies hit me so hard that I opened my eyes. Like, he didn't knock me out, but I went black for a second. I opened my eyes on the ground, and I was sick to my stomach. It was the only fight I ever remember. Like, I wanted to puke on the ice on the way to the box. And he was just, I looked up, and he was just
full of madness.
Like a junkyard fucking dog. Yeah, he's pure madness. He was looking right through me. Now, that being said, we ended up hanging out and being buddies after that. But,
great guy.
Fuck.
I know. I was telling I took my son was in a hockey tournament at Niagara Falls this weekend, and you run into guys. You played against him, hardcore Jordy Kinnear. Long story short, we were chatting, and the same thing we're chatting about now. We're laughing about players now, this and that, how much the game's changed. But you're talking about who hits hard. You know who hit, and you played junior against him. My first year in the American League, Adirondack, we had nobody up there, myself and Jamie Pusher. And Albany was loaded with guys. Anyway, Jamie Pusher used to tell me, he's like, Mac, make sure because I told him I'm going to try Hulse. Keep it KO Hulse.
That was my first fight in the Western League.
He just used to torch me in front of the net, TR.
Oh, fuck. So big, tough. Looked like Frankenstein.
Push is like, make sure you know he's a lefty. So didn't make a difference. I dropped the mitts, and I fucking wake up over in the penalty box, and I'm trying to figure out what team I'm on. I could not. I was holding my jersey out, not a word of a lie. I had this on tape. I go to Albany's bench trying to get in the defense door, and they're fucking pushing me away. Like,
oh
what
my
are you doing?
God, J-Mac.
Yeah,
so I was
the only time I've been my bell rung where I didn't know where I was.
And he was, if I'm not mistaken, he throws lefts, right?
Oh, left, right on the.
I think he was debriefed that he was lefty. Yeah. It's a good tip, I gotta admit. And watch out, he's a lefty.
Oh yeah, Bush was right. He said watch for the left. He wasn't lying. It was a left.
My first game.
And Wada left.
First game in the Western League. I'm brought up as a 15-year-old. As a 15-year-old, I'm allowed my 3 games. I'm sitting on the bench, and I'm like, fuck it. And I look at Lankow, and a few Lanks is a young guy too, but he's a year older than me. So I was 15, he's 16. Like Jason Bowen is there, a few more, and I'm going, well, fuck it. Like, if I go do that, though, it's going to be insane. Like, does anybody do that? And I remember the boys are going, no. I said, does anybody 15 years old get called up? I said, fight, let alone the toughest guy. I said, well, who's the toughest? And they pointed that John Baduke was one guy, and Cale Hulse was the other. And I said, well, Hulse is a better player, isn't he? In other words, I might as well take him off the ice. And I went out and fuck me, oh my God, I got it somewhere at home. I almost feel I should post it. I couldn't even get my, like he held both of my hands together, like, you know, that like that he held both of my arms together with one hand and just fed me with the other. I couldn't get out of the way. I was trying to put my visor down. It was awful. He kicked the living shit out of me. And the boys used to call him Frankenstein, this big guy, and he had this long face, but he ended up marrying a supermodel and stayed in Phoenix, I believe. Not that
crazy looking eyes on him.
Crazy looking eyes.
Like his hockey
he was on heroin before he came out.
His hockey DB picture is fucking terrifying.
Yeah, it's
because he's got like a broken nose, so he's got like a scar across his bridge too. Is like
he throws some mean left jackhammers, and he didn't really like to do it. That was a scary thing I heard about him after. But I was like, he's one of those guys that were, scary.
He had the look, and he had that stick. Those guys he was a D-man in front of the net back then. Like the Western League guys would let fights go. They would like it was. The A too. I'm not only, and the O was nuts then too, but I'm just saying, like from my experience,
right.
There was there was chaos going to break out at any minute, and no one. The thing that no one brings up is going in front of the net with these guys because they give you a cross check in the back, and then they give you a whack across the ankle, and the ref any more than that, and they get called on it. But you're allowed 1, 2, and then you wait like 5 seconds. boom, boom. It was like clearing. Yeah. You were allowed to, if you were anywhere near the front of the net. That's why the hardest thing I still say I've ever had to do, I only did it in an exhibition, was go in front of the net with Chris Pronger.
I was going to say, that is the Chris Pronger. Now, that's what the kids call the Chris Pronger.
Yeah, exactly.
One of your guys is Brady TR that obviously has passed away. It's his bird dog. I remember, man, he used to, he would like literally crack you in two.
Oh, man. He was like, how scary is that?
He did not want to go in front of that net over in Newfoundland. No way, no.
And he had a way of like, if he had a way of doing it like the bird and a few more. Cale Hulse was definitely one of these guys where they'd like cross-check you slowly up around the shoulder pads so it'd like drift off and it'd hit the back of your head. And now it's a headshot. You're like suspended for 20 games. Back then, they fucking let it go. It was just like, if you're going to come in here.
You keep your stick down.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep your stick down. He took his ear off.
Yeah, I know. And you would often, they'd say, well, you got to protect yourself if you go in there. Okay, well, it wouldn't be like, he took a penalty. It'd be like, put more padding on then, pussy.
Yeah.
Now, J-Mac, going back to after that year, because I do want to rewind, the national team, how did you get there? And two-part question. How did you get on the national team? And secondly, decent year, 35 points in 50 games. But how did you get 133 penalty minutes on the national team?
Playing national, who the fuck?
They ended up sending me back early, but I went. So after those years, my agent said, like, okay, like, so they said, well, it's foot speed, right? We don't think he played blah, 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 foot speed, okay? So whatever. So I go to the Canadian national team with Andy Murray, which was a great move because, it was just, Andy was a great man, first of all, and Mike Johnson, and shout out to Mike from Halifax, too, because he's a good man. And anyway, just playing on those big sheets of ice, Terry, I think it did make me a better player that year coming back. I went into the IHL and had that year with Randy Carlyle, 25 goals.
That was 98-99. I want to tell people that. 98-99, you go to the Manitoba Moose, 25 goals, 52 points, 283 minutes, J-Mac. How the fuck do you not get up after that one? 25 goals in 300 minutes.
That's when Pittsburgh signed me. So that's how I got back over to the American League. So I went over to the Canadian national team at the IHL for 2 years. And then when I had that year, then Pittsburgh signed me, and that's how I got to Wilkes-Barre.
Okay.
Did you say Randy Carlyle was the coach while you were in the Moose? Did I hear that
Randy Carlyle was the coach.
Wow. I didn't know his coaching career went back that far.
Hardest practices, hand down, any coach I had.
That's where I was going to go.
No way.
That's where I was going. I was going to ask. It was
hour and 40 minutes, and a good 40 minutes of battle drills 3 days a week.
Oh, fuck. Like bull in the ring and shit.
It's reason I think Phil Kessel wanted to leave for a reason there.
My God.
That's where I was going. I was wondering. I was going to ask, what was he like as a coach?
But it's shocking because, like, the Moose is another example of, like, Carlisle going back to a place, right? Like, he coached the Moose for years, got up, was an assistant with the Capitals for a couple seasons, then goes back to the Moose. Then he goes to the Ducks. He's there for ages, goes to the Leafs for a few years, and then goes back to the Ducks. Like, whatever happens, like, his fucking teams, even when they fire him, they like him enough to bring him back every couple of years.
I guess he reins players in.
Was he a nice guy?
Accountable, right? He keeps his teams accountable. Any teams that think that they're getting outworked, there's one of your guys, John Torts, and him, and
J-Mac, was he a good guy?
Yeah, he was. I liked Kitty. Kitty was a good guy. He was, yeah.
And
he was starting out there with his first couple of years of getting, so he had good stuff there, but he loved to curse and swear, was a little rough around the edges to begin with, but I'm sure he kind of feathered that out a little bit. But
I'm sorry, is his nickname Kitty?
Hard practices, I remember.
Do you mean Kitty is in a cat?
No, it's in Kitty Carlisle.
That's his nickname.
The actress, yeah.
Last horse crosses the finish line here.
That's funny, Miss Carlisle, yeah.
And
Gotcha.
so, J-Mac, now, interesting side note. So you've been coached by Forbes Kennedy and Randy Carlisle, and I'm sure a bunch more. Did any other coaches stand out to you?
Yeah, you know what? You know who was Ryan McGill? When I was talking about Hartford, I wanted to mention Ryan McGill.
McGill, right?
Yeah, Ryan.
Lost his eye playing, didn't he?
When I went there, yeah, he did. He took a stick in the eye.
He was a good player. Yeah, I remember that guy. Good player.
Good guy. When I went there, well, TR, I was 28 in Hartford, okay? He had all these young guys, and I went in there and had a good start, but he put me in places to succeed, and where a lot of teams, regardless how good you do, they'll keep you right in the fucking third and fourth line regardless. Hence, when I was in Wilkes-Barre, I mean, I had a good first year in Wilkes-Barre, and then fucking young guys come in, and they just placed me and left me there, right?
And weren't you the captain?
Never want to be a captain of an American League team because you know you're fucking never getting up. So.
I fucking said that before one of the first shows, J-Mac. We were talking, I said, I hope everybody realizes, like, it's the kiss of death. No one wants the captain in the minors. Nobody. It gives some feeling of longevity to it. Like, okay, like I'm here for the long haul, right?
Get used to it. Everyone in this room's got to look up to you, so get used. Get
and everybody strokes. You're right. Everybody strokes. You're a great leader, and when am I getting called up? Well, let's not talk about that right now. You're really leading well, and you're bringing these young guys along.
Doing great down here.
It always just reminds me, like, whenever I hear about anybody getting the captaincy in the minors, it always just kind of reminds me of Bull Durham. About how Crash Davis just like he doesn't want the home run record in the minors. It's just like the last thing he fucking wants.
Yeah,
like that's always what it reminds me of whenever I hear anybody talking about.
Well, it means you're probably not getting called up. Yeah, for sure. That's a good point.
Bad.
But now listen. So, and you go down to Wilkes-Barre for those few years. Mac, you're fighting an awful lot. Like you're really dropping the mitts.
Yeah.
Were you must have been consciously trying to get up top. I mean,
I was.
You were starting to fight, not starting, but you were fighting almost exclusively heavyweights at this point. And so you were. Year two, maybe there was a little bit of a switch over halfway through my career. So these young guys were coming in, Brian McGrattan, right? Trevor Gillies, all these new young fellas. And I guess, again, it's kiss of death when you have those penalty minutes. They size up the paper, and then they probably they pick out of a hat who they're going to grab, right? Yeah, I always said that. Remember before the game, the game, J-Mac coming in, and the game notes? The game notes would be in everybody's stall, and you just sit down. And I often said, like, you play. Let's take the Philadelphia Phantoms, for example. Like, the first six guys in penalty minutes all had, like, by the end of the year, had more than 200. And each team had 4 or 5 of those guys, and you were just going, fuck. So I remember, like, going into Portland and going, okay, fuck, like, Mark Major's huge. Ryan Vandenbush got a fucking punch that might knock me out. And looking and going, well, who can I fight? And then, like, settling on Joel Theriault, who's like a killer. But like I just figured, if I ask him early enough, maybe the other guys won't come at me. And then Mark Major would fight Dave Morissette, and then Vandenbush would fight Brownie, and it would be almost a dancing partner, and you'd be like, well, like I remember the time I fought Cam Russell. The NHL, my last shift, like, and I tell people, like, Cam Russell's a killer, and I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm not disrespecting him, but my options were Bob Probert, Mark Janssens, and Cam Russell. Yeah. Like, I took the lesser of 3 real evils there.
Right.
But now listen, so you're in Wilkes-Barre, you do all right though, Mac. I mean, 1 year, 330 minutes, that's insane, and you keep chipping away 20 points. You go to Hartford. Now, there's a couple of stories here. So, guys, in 03-04, J-Mac signs with the Rangers. He's in Hartford and does fairly well. I'm going to say a point every second game, 100
Can I pause this very quick? Because I have a really important Wilkes-Barre question. You played with, I've been waiting all day for this one. How was it like playing with Alexander Dag? Because, I got to ask about Alexander Dag because of Alexander Dag. Those of you who might not remember, he was selected first overall.
You know what? He was a good man. He was good to me. Him and I actually traveled a little bit on the road together. We went out just one quick, but we went out in Utah to the Sundance Festival one time. He took me out up there, and he knew some people up there, and he played all right when he came back, but his off ice was much better than his on ice.
Okay. Because I
have nothing bad, all good things to say about that guy.
I do know that there was a brief time where he, like you said, he came back. The quote was, I believe, something like, "I've always hated hockey," as he was leaving, kind of, because things didn't turn out.
When he went out and acted for a while, remember that? I mean, of course you do. You played on his team afterwards.
Yeah.
But I met him a couple times. I thought he was a great dude, and I've heard. But maybe it would have been different, J-Mac, coming across him when he was 18 than coming across him when he's 28. You've learned a lot,
right?
Especially
he was humbled at this point quite a bit, right?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Good to hear. Just had to ask. It was something that I was like, okay.
Dude.
Good to know.
So
Good to
now
hear.
listen, with the Rangers, so you're doing what, 41 games, 22 points, 101 minutes now. I was always under the impression, because you get called up for 4 games, right? To the New York Rangers. You're what, 28 years old?
Yeah.
So that's late to get called up for your first games. So I didn't know if these guys were like going, you know what, like it was a reward for having having earned that over the course of your career. Not to downplay that,
right.
Because you were playing. I mean, you're getting a point every second game, and on your way to 200 minutes again. So you were having a good year. But did they mention any of that too? What was the feel when you got called up? Now that's my first question, and I think you know exactly what my second question is, because while you were called up, there was a phenomenal set of circumstances that ended up taking place, and we can get there in a minute. But tell me that you getting called up. What did they say, and who said it?
So Hartford kind of had a young team that year. They had a lot of younger guys, but they had Kenny Jernander there as an older guy, Richard Scott. I kind of forget who our older guys were right outside. So I was one of the older guys. So I think it was kind of maybe a little too full, TR. It was probably one of my best starts I did have. Those, whatever I had there, those numbers, a lot of them happened before Christmas. So my first call up was right on December 13th. The team was struggling, kind of thing.
And now wait, before we go any further, this is a Rangers team with
there's
legends,
some stars here,
as like Bobby Holik, Mark Messier, Alexei Kovalev,
Lindros.
Brian Leach, Matthew Barnaby, Eric Lindros. Yager,
Peter Nedved. You skipped Peter Nedved on that list.
No, what do you mean? I'm the one that brought it up. I'm in the middle of a sentence, and you're telling me what I'm forgetting? Well, you're going to tell me what I'm forgetting before I get to it?
3 of us are looking at the same roster.
You're worse than that fucking guy on Twitter today that shit on me for not saying anything about the Raptors things. What, am I responsible to fucking comment on everything? And right now, I was getting to that. I was going to say Darius Kasparaitis. But
Love Darius?
I thought you hated Darius.
No, I hated his signing
I
bonus.
remember him being a legend off the ice, though. But anyway, Dale Parrington. Holy fuck.
Simon, Dale Purington.
Oh, God.
Whose stall were you next to? Where did they set you up to? Who were you sitting next to in the dressing room when you first got called up?
Out in the practice rink, I was between Kovalev and who was on the left of me? I think it was a goalie, to tell you the truth. UC Markkinen.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
But up at the big rink, the game, I only played the one game in the Garden. I played 4 total, 3 in the road. But the game in the Garden was against the Islanders, and I can't remember exactly who I was in there between.
First of all, because I'm going to ask you something about that fucking game, because I was watching that game, and I came right off my fucking chair. Okay? Now, but you know what I'm going to say. But now I'm talking in the 4 games, you had 19 penalty minutes. We'll get to that first. So that means there's at least one fight involved. Or you check someone from behind or slashed him in the head.
Well, I get called up the very first time. Jen Schoenfeld calls me in, actually. I'll never forget it, because she calls me and he calls everybody's son. He's like, son, you're going up to New York, blah, 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 blah. And I remember just like, wow, okay. Because I didn't really expect it, even if as good as I did, I never expected it anyway, because at this point it doesn't make a difference how good you're doing. Obviously, at this point, they don't care anymore, right?
Yeah.
But still, you're playing for pride and you're playing for whatever, right? Obviously. Yeah. But the first game, TR, you can respect this. So I go to Buffalo the first game, but I look at Buffalo's roster and I'm like, fuck, this is like the Rochester American. Fucking guys. They're no good. So I was full of confidence that night.
Great.
And we actually won 5-2, played very good, had a couple shots on goal. I could have actually scored that game a couple times. I had a couple chances in close. Let's not say I could score, but
no, but and I know what you mean, by the way, going back. Isn't it great when you get up to that level and you look around and you see like half the team that you played against the year before? I know what you mean when you say it's like that. I used to go, well, fuck, like that's Dave Scatcherd, and I played against him last year. Like, yeah. And sorry to cut you off, but that's what goes through my mind. And it used to make me feel comfortable. The more people I saw that I succeeded against at some level in the past, it would make it seem, okay.
Care of this, though. So I win to Toronto, though, now on Hockey Night in Canada the next night, because I know they're going to have the same lineup. So we go in there, and leading up to the game, like I'm as nervous as fucking long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Like, I'm like...
Wholesome joke.
fit to be tied because Fader announces the starting lineup, and I'm on the starting lineup. Then he announces there's TR, and it's Domi, Belak, Tucker, Marchment, and somebody on defense. And I'm thinking to myself, fuck, I'm going to get my head kicked right fucking first shift. You know?
Oh, fuck.
So I'm so nervous before that game just because it's totally different, right? Like to what I was saying, like Buffalo the night before felt like an American League game. Now just because Toronto is Hockey Night in Canada, all bright lights, you got all the names you recognize from growing up, totally different feel.
Totally different
Yeah, I
feel.
could hardly handle the fucking warm-up.
Like I remember going down in
anyway.
playing a game in Florida and going like, holy fuck, there was like 6,000 people there. I wasn't nervous at all. It felt like we were playing shinny. And then playing, you know, in Madison Square Garden. And it's amazing what the whole mental setting can do to you. Anyway, keep going.
Well, yeah, but back to back those nights, from looking at Hockey DB, it looks like the Buffalo game was 14,000, Toronto game's like 20. Right? And that's just what they're actually showing on the attendance on Hockey DB.
And a lot of people in
like,
Buffalo or Toronto or fans from Ontario that want to come over and see a game.
Yep.
So they're not always intimidating. They're different in the playoffs when Mayday fucking scored and all that shit. That's different.
And no disrespect to these guys, it's Eric Bolton and Peters, but they're the same as me at that point, right? But then if for some reason you think you go Domi and you go whoever else they had there, Nathan Parrott and Marchment and these guys. It's a mindset, right? But really, you know.
Yeah, it's a mindset.
Anyway, back then, that's the way I was thinking around, and I was wound up before the game, forgot my tie down, or I thought I could have swore I put it on, but that's why I got kicked out because I had no tie down on.
Who'd you fight?
But Nathan Parrott, The Rock.
You fought The Rock, and The Rock's our buddy.
Rock.
But I guess shit had to be done.
But we weren't buddies because I went to Newfoundland the next year after that. I didn't know him yet.
Holy Jesus, he's a tough fucking cat. But by the way, guys, Nathan Rock Parrott is a boxer now. Did you know that, J-Mac? I went up and had a meal with him. I was in Toronto last year, and I saw him come across my Instagram feed. And I said, you know, and so did Ian White showed up on there recently. I went to see him in Saskatoon last year. I'm like, you know, these guys are non-photogenic. The last thing I ever thought I'd see was Rock or Ian White on Instagram or anything of that. So I phoned him up, and we went and had pancakes. And Rock's doing great. He said he got back into boxing, and he was boxing for his own weight class, and he was kicking the shit out of guys.
Tough dude, The Rock.
Well, it's good. I figured because we were all buddies, and I figured you'd like to hear that he's doing real well. He actually asked about you. Okay, now so keep going. That gives me 2 games. What's your next game?
So after the Toronto game, we clear customs in Niagara Falls, and the girl in the Rangers office forgot to get my visa updated. So they haul me off the plane in Buffalo when we touched down in customs, and haul me off. Long story short, I spent 2.5-3 days in Niagara Falls having a great time. And I'm thinking to myself,
there's a casino there. You probably were having a great time.
There was lots of places there.
There's lots of like what's his name? Chris Penn says in Reservoir Dogs. There's places all over the place. We got places all over the place.
Niagara Falls' new tourist slogan. There's lots of places there.
I'm sure you got into a bit of fucking trouble.
Finally, from the Rangers. This is why I love the Rangers back in these days, because TR could probably get this is another team. So they call me back for on Wednesday. She calls me back. I already spent a bunch of money at the outlets, new sneakers on, cruising around. And I'm expecting her to say, you're going back to Hartford. She goes, I hope you're ready because you're going back to New York. You got to play tomorrow night. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I haven't skated. I've been in the bar for 2.5 days.
So, wow.
I actually, they get a flight. I go back to New York, play the Islanders on Wednesday night. And
on Long Island?
No, in Madison Square Garden. That's the first game or the only game that I played in there. But that was against the Islanders. And what an experience that was, just to hear the Islanders fans and the Ranger fans going at it and warm up.
Wow. If you're going to play 4 games, let one of them be that. Well,
I thought we were going to get into it, but we didn't actually.
You and Ash were chirping.
Pass that night. We didn't that night, no.
Wow. Yeah, that would have been a good one. You guys are the same kind of fighter.
I twisted my ankle that night in that game. And That was my first 3-game stint. So this is how I got, and then I got sent back down to the minors for 2 months. And then, TR, to your question earlier, were they doing a thing? And this is why I don't think they were. They recalled me in March when they were doing the playoff push, and I played another game against the Flyers. That was another in February, and we had line brawl there, and I got tangled up with Brashear. Of all people.
Of all people. Of all people.
I'm in the corner, and he fell on top. He was trying to choke me out on the bottom of the ice. I was like trying to eye gouge him and everything else. It was nuts. It was just like, and I couldn't even breathe. I remember Purington, our buddy Purington, was in a tilt with somebody on top of me.
Purington is one of the craziest people I've ever met in my life. Keep going.
Oh, he popped. We talk about getting the gloves off quick. He'll pop you with the one on first and then slide it off.
Oh, yeah. He'll do just about anything.
Yeah,
he'll shove it up your fucking ass if he can get away with it.
Very
Clean your
guy.
fucking teeth with the,
Fuck.
Yeah.
And that looks like it was the second part of a home and home, I'm guessing, from what you're saying. It looks like if it was February, there was a home and home against Philly. So it would have been like Valentine's Day. You guys are playing in Philly and have this.
It was Valentine's Day.
A lovely way to spend Valentine's Day with Donald Brashear.
With Donald Brashear.
That's a nice
at the bottom of a fucking scrum heap with Donald Brashear on Valentine's Day.
It's going to be a job to top that one.
There's a card there somewhere. Yeah, there might even be a T-shirt. Oh yeah, okay. So now listen, before we get to the next question, tell me, within those 4 games, I thought it was the home game. Maybe it wasn't. Tell us about the fucking empty net. You know the one I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
well,
and it's a great
the
picture.
Islanders.
Oh, that was against
It was. Well, that was against the Islanders, that game I was talking about. So
now, explain all this, because this is one of my favorite moments that any of my buddies have had in sports.
And this is why I love Glenn Sather, too. First, not to hop all over the place, but in Buffalo the night before, he comes up beside me in pregame skate. He goes, "Hey, Jamie, did you ever play a game before?" And I'm saying to myself, "Jamie, it's Jason." But anyway, I'll go. I don't give a fuck what you call me. I was going to call him. I'm like, never played a game. Never played a game. This is first. He didn't even know, right? So, obviously, Shoney called or whoever the GM, and then I'm there on the ice. So, first of all, he didn't even have to put me in there on Buffalo that night because there was 2 or 3 guys that were healthy, right? So he put me in, which I thought was, looking back now, not a lot of guys would do that today. They're so afraid to make a mistake today or put somebody in there because he wasn't taken in the first or second round. That'll make them look bad. That it was good of them to really do it. To tell you the truth, and that's why I respect the Rangers for so much for it, because at the end of the day, it's as TR can see, it's so close to getting games and not getting games. We're splitting hairs here, and to have games is nice versus not having them. And really, they could not have done it. So, but so I get off on a beaten path. I forget what I was going to say now.
No, not at all. I was talking about that game, the empty net, and you were right. That's a key part of the story is that I'm even putting you in because, Mac, if you didn't, like I say, I only got the 8, but I got him. I'm an NHLer, right? You're an NHLer.
That was how I got on there with Messier. So the goalie's pulled instead of putting on all those guys you named, like Bobby Holik, he fucking puts me out
the goalie's pulled at the end of the game. I got the TV on now. I'm watching this shit. And I'm the last person I'm expecting to see on the ice at the end of the game with Messier is J-Mac, and that's nothing against you. It's just, anyway, now tell the story of what happens.
So we go down into the other end. We ended up going off my stick and going in the other end. I went to take a D-to-D pass away, and Messier tracks it down in the corner, and he puts it behind the net. I come out from behind the net, and it goes off my stick, and it must have touched one of their defensemen, the Islanders' defenseman, a skate or whatnot, because I didn't even end up getting an assist on it, but Messier was trying to get me one. He takes it and just comes around, and it's like I'm right there, but he snipes her in the pipe, right, for 623.
Oh yeah, because it was a big goal for Messier.
Yeah.
I remember. I would have guessed.
We were both huddled around the empty cave, and I was just like, "You throw a guy a bone over here, maybe."
Mac's sitting there, and I'm going, "He's going to get a goal. He's going to get a goal." But then it's a huge goal for Messier, like surpassed somebody on the all-time lister, and I didn't know. And it's nothing against Messier. I mean, whatever.
Jeez,
like
man,
Mac's
you
out
got
there.
623. How about giving me one? How about
nearly
one?
Yeah, and not only that, though.
When we get over to the bench, he was banging on the stick trying to get the referee over when he heard I didn't get an assist. But for some reason, they never gave me a helper either. It wasn't really a direct pass, I guess.
Well, what I love about it, J-Mac, and you should post it. I hope when I Google it, the picture will come up. But that picture, there's a picture celebrating that goal, and I know you've got it, but I've seen that other places. Like the picture, I've seen it like on the Rangers, like on their website back in the day. I don't know, but like it was one of those pictures that lasts. And like I said, like I played 8 games, but one of them was the game that Dave Morissette friggin' knocked out Bob Probert. And I was standing on the ice for it, and it's mentioned in his book and there. And that was my I felt like something significant happened when I played. Well, that's it. Not only are you there playing, but you're selling his significant goal, and I love that. I love it about hockey. It says so much. Here's a guy with one of the most games played of all time and achieving his 623rd goal. And here's a guy that played a lot of minor league games playing in his second or third game, and completely the other end of the spectrum. Both elated, and it's almost to me a symbol of the community of the game rather than the New York Rangers in 2001 or whatever the fuck it was, or 99.
Really, yeah, no, for sure.
2003, and I've got another question.
2003,
bit of a hockey jersey nut bar myself. Did you wear the Lady Liberty jersey because they were around then? With the Statue of Liberty head.
No, I didn't. We had the blue one just with the Rangers right front. Yep, the diagonal.
That's a hard one to find, the Lady Liberty one. I was wondering if there's an image of you out there with it on.
Do you? And by the way, I've heard, and because my next question is about the alumni, because I do, like if I'm in Montreal, I use the alumni room. I don't feel bad. I used to feel bad. I didn't go in there for like 5 years because I thought, these guys are legends. But to be honest, I mean, Reggie Houle, who was the GM when I was there, that a lot of people think I have animosity towards, but I really don't. But I kind of felt maybe bad, because we had a bit of a disagreement. I didn't really go back. And then one night he caught me there in the crowd. I just went over. I had a few beers in me. I went over with my buddy. He said, "Are you serious?" He said, "Come down and use it. It's yours to use. You get 4 tickets a year." He said, there's only 700 players that ever played here in Montreal. And when I thought about it like that, I'm like, oh, yeah, wow. I guess. And they've been around 100 years. So then I thought, okay, I'll start doing it. So I do use it, and I'm thankful for that. I know you, at least on a couple of occasions, do you still use the Rangers alumni situation?
Well, I took my son to a game in January. We were actually at the Garden, but we didn't get upstairs. The green room, I don't know. It's a pretty neat room just to go and relax in there. You see all sorts of people on those days. But no, TR, I haven't been in there and to take advantage of that in a while, actually.
Do you go to the Wilkes-Barre games?
Pardon me? Wilkes-Barre, yeah, I go to the games here in Wilkes-Barre.
Do you? Okay, I figured as much. And they still get a lot of support, right? That's one of the nicest minor pro buildings I've ever been in. Now, the last time I was in it was 18 years ago, so maybe it's just run-of-the-mill now, but I remember it being great.
No, it's a beautiful setup up there. It is. It's Wilkes-Barre probably is one of the top 3 or 4 places to play in the American League for sure. 6,000 people every night. When I played, it was 8 or 9, but it's down a little bit, but it's still consistent and a good, nice community and a good fan base, and it is. It's a great little AAA.
And I guess the last question about Wilkes-Barre, because we had your buddy Parsons on. Do you, without explaining the whole thing, do you remember what went on that St. Paddy's Day massacre when you guys got in that total brawl?
Yeah.
And wasn't Linger on the ice?
Linger was on the ice.
Linger was on the other fucking team, guys. I don't know if we brought that up. And the whole Pars came here to Newfoundland, and we had him on the show, and we talked about it. I said, I don't know if I brought up the fact that Linger was one of the shit disturbers on the other goddamn team.
Oh, yeah, Linger was on there doing his thing.
Did you know what was going to happen? Briefly, because Pars explained it, but briefly tell us about that.
Well, we didn't. We didn't know it was going to happen, but they had a couple guys called up there. I forget Winfield was one of the guys.
Yeah, Brad Wingfield, I think.
I remember he low hit John Jacopin, so then they kept us all out on the ice. Like there was a scrum after that hit, and they kept us all out on the ice. Except they changed up a couple guys to amp her up. So the play only went on for about another 20 seconds, and then Jacopin chased him, and we ended up having a line brawl. And then, the line brawl escalated to Pars going off to one side. I went off to one side, but Linger and I actually get into a scrap for a little bit.
And these guys are best buddies, boys. Like they grew up together, right? So
yeah.
Anyway, keep going.
Yeah, but then Linger and I get at it, but then Andre Skrupko, who after I was out there for about 4 or 5 minutes, come off the bench, fresh as a daisy.
I mean, you're so bad, boys. If you watch that, watch Jason MacDonald at the end of this. He can't lift he puts up his arms to go again. I could feel you, man. Like, I'm looking. You put up your arms at the end of it, and you're like, you start shaking them because they can't stand up on their own. And and Trupko him and I probably fought about 4 or 5 times leading up to this, and good fights. He's a Russian guy. Good. He is pretty tough. Yeah. But I mean, after that game, you watch him at the end there. I took some lumps. I could literally not brush my hair for about 2 weeks after that game. Oh man, that's.
Up, I mean, there was.
That's
Jeremy
the definition
Reed was
of
on there. We were into it before then.
Jesus, these guys. That was old school.
You
even
wonder
then.
how guys back then, those skates, like you look at that, and there's guys' skates flying around. I'm like,
I know. That's the big thing to me, like, because I'm like, I've often said it, I'd rather get hit with a punch than with my head going through the middle. But what I don't understand is how more people haven't, like, lost fingers or at least been cut. Or,
right?
it was chaos all the time. That's a perfect example. Like, and there's skates, guys are down, and not only that, like, your fucking shirt would come off and everything. There was a lot of bare skin and blades going around at that time.
And there's a great
sounds questionable, bare skin and blades going around.
But if anybody listening is interested in this, if you just it's on the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins website. There's a blow by blow that breaks down what happened in this fight. It has multiple video sections because they found an old VHS of the game, uploaded it to YouTube. It's all there without audio. You can watch it all. They kind of go beat by beat of what's going on and then do a penalty breakdown. And so in that game, Jason MacDonald gets 5 for fighting, a game misconduct for secondary altercation, another fighting, game misconduct, secondary, a game misconduct for aggressor, and a game. So you got 5 game misconducts in this game.
So you nearly set the record. If Paris didn't, it would have been you.
You got 2 5 for fightings and 5 game misconducts, and then Paris got 5 for fighting, a game misconduct. He got 4 game misconducts. 1 for third man in. Yeah,
there's the name of the show.
There we go.
So
what happens when you play the same team 12 times? Probably played that team about 3 times in exhibition, 12 times in regular season.
Yeah.
By the time of the
and every
end
year.
of the season,
yeah, you get to know him. You get to know him.
And so J-Mac, after all that, you come to the St. John's Maple Leafs, and that had some beauties. That was one of the last years of the Leafs, if not the last year. I'm just going off the top of my head. Kyle Wellwood was a friend of the show. We had you had Mark Morrow, you had Harold Druken, Jason MacDonald. I'm not even reading.
Kyle Wellwood, David Ling,
Ian White,
Nathan Barrett in Paris, Ian White.
Koliakovo was there.
That was by far my funnest year of playing hockey.
That was I was the broad. So the people out there that don't know, so that was I'd hurt my ankle, so I came back and I was the color commentator with Brian Rogers.
Cool.
Brian Rogers was doing the games and I was doing the color. So
Brian's a legend himself.
Yeah, he is, certainly is.
Brian is.
And the boys, all lived around here. I mean, this is a chaos time. But by the end of the year, and I'm not going to say why, but there was 14 or 15 divorces or splits. It was it was fucking nuts. And I don't know if you remember this, but there was just a lot of partying, a lot of great things. Kyle Wellwood ended up moving up. I think Boys was on the team that year, wasn't he?
Matt
Was it the year
Stajan,
before?
another very, very sturdy NHL career right there.
Perrin ended up getting back up to the NHL. Koliakovo was there.
Not to we're off a year because that was the strike year. We were all down there on the strike.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. So everybody I mentioned but Boys, right, was there.
Yeah, Boys. I was going to say, Boys wasn't there, but all those other guys.
All those other guys were, and Jeremy Williams was Jeremy Williams there.
Yep.
Jeremy Williams, Matt Stajan, Ian White. Those
Brendan
were all the
Bell,
young guys.
another
Brendan Bell.
Brendan
a lot
Bell,
of good players.
Leaf,
Yeah, Brendan ended up getting a couple years in the show. But anyway, and a real good bunch, and whatever happened during the year, it real fun bunch. It happened that there was so many splits, and I mean some chaos. But one day, so me and Mac, and this is at the this is at one of the breaks. It's like at the All-Star break or something. So there's nothing to do the next day. So, and we partied and I get up. I'm just like, I'm so fucking hungry and I can't wait. Everybody's like, oh, there's no skip the dishes or anything then. So I'm waiting for everybody. We're going to go to the Big R or something. I said, fuck it. I'll just eat these cookies. Fucking, and I give one to Mac. And by the time, we were going down to the Delta for some reason, I think at a room. And I'm halfway down there and I'm like, man, I don't feel good. And then Drooks calls me for some reason, needs a ride, and he's like, "Fuck, did you see any of my hash cookies?" And I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" So me and Mac, and I know everybody has that like story from a trip, but do you remember that, Mac, that fucking day at the Delta? Yeah. And we were like trying to like ever so desperately to come out of the abyss.
Remember Brendan Bell? Like 5 of them rented that big house down. Yeah. You guys know it better than me towards
Pleasant Street.
Rink, down towards what?
Pleasant Street, wasn't it?
Well, no, I lived on Pleasant Street, but the boys lived down at the opposite end, not where the rink is, but down the opposite end of Water Street, but down that end where that
I know
hotel
exactly.
Is.
Yeah, where it meets Waterford Bridge Road. Yeah, and
we
one of
used
those
to go back there Saturday night, and you'd be lucky to get out of there Tuesday morning to work.
And that was the way it was set up here. The same. As with the Canadian teams that play in the NHL, they all play on Saturday night and then they have Sunday off usually.
Yeah.
It's not always the case in the other teams in the States, but here they had a very similar schedule to that because people would come in and either play Friday or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday. Rarely was there a Sunday game in that package for those years. So we would often, and so you would get that day off. So after the game on Saturday, we would do just about anything, but we spent a lot of nights at that house. And anyway, this fucking particular day, we woke up and got on hash right off the bat. Didn't even, just had no idea.
I love how you said a few cookies. It's like, we're going to go to the Big R because love the idea that athletes are also going to the Big R. Makes me feel a lot better about myself.
Yeah. No, we did, especially after those days. You'd look forward to it because you'd go out after the game and you wouldn't eat anything. So you could have whatever you wanted in the morning. And not feel like you put on weight. I mean, a lot of that shit too at the time was trying to like stay the same like weight and all that shit. And I remember like even though I wanted to eat that and everything, and I wasn't against doing it, I didn't give a fuck just as long as I stayed under 200 pounds or 205 at the time, I think, whatever it was. And imagine that, how silly all that was. Someone telling you how much weight. I've since realized, I would probably play it at 190 or 195. I feel the best at. But, you had to take into account that you have to fight guys who were fucking greased up and fucking broids and all that shit, So I guess the average weight was a little bit heavier. But anyway, of that year now, Mac,
thick gauge laces.
You were here. And Mac came in with Senior a few times too, boys. He's a veteran of the basement.
Explain to you for sure.
Oh, I certainly will. I
got to get over and see Senior, actually. I got to get over. I needed a good dose of Senior.
Yeah, you need a weekend over here, and that in many ways. If
Big R is still open.
Bring Jagger. I've got a 9-year-old, and if not, the Big R is open, and so is Turkey Joe's is still there too. J Mac.
Oh, I fell down the stairs there once, and that's a lot of stairs to fall down.
It's still there. I don't know. I don't even know who goes there anymore. We go to Greensleeves. Stephen Hancock, who ran that place, is now over running Greensleeves, but. How many nights?
I used to get caught up in the curtains, couldn't find my way out.
Oh, yeah. And then telling people, we're just going to go to Turkey's to watch the game. Okay, we'll see you.
Yeah, like on it Maze in there.
What was so you played here 04-05. Any memory jump into your mind other than, we had a lot of fun, but does any memory stand out?
Oh, geez.
I know that's a loaded question.
Loaded question. Yeah, there's lots, man. I just enjoy, obviously, the culture over there, and obviously everybody, how friendly, blah, 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 all that stuff. But as far as the season over there, if you remember, Linger broke my ankle. I probably got hit with a slap shot, Linger, in the fall, and my ankle, I was in a boot until February. So from October till March, I'd be downtown just with the boot cruising around. So, I have a lot of memories. A lot of them are foggy. I have to write them down, and then let's get back to you.
Oh, yeah. I remember just hobbling up the street with you in that boot, just like, and you time it. You're like, okay, well, let's see. I got another 5 weeks in the boot, and I rode the bike.
Shattered my ankle, not cracked. It's coming through this, and Linger has a bomb, as you know, and it hit right on the bare skin, but It snowed a lot. You guys probably don't remember that winter, but I remember it snowed and snowed and snowed over there.
Yeah, I do remember you hobbling around. I remember you slipping on George Street with the fucking thing on, with your brace on or whatever it was, your boot, and you slipped.
I just started at the top of Pleasant Street and just glide right down by the Delta, and then stop right at Cotton Club. Just
a couple of GTs almost set up by the house.
It was almost
put the kickstand down and away you go. Cigarettes.
It was almost odd to see you come back. So that's why it was rough stats. Like it must. I didn't even look. I didn't see what your stats were that year, but like it must have been because like you were playing out. It wasn't like coming into camp, playing 3 months, and then getting hurt. It was just being thrust into pro hockey after 4 months of boozing with a boot on in St. John's.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how the fuck?
I was just mad over there, too, when I played. I think I had like 14 fights in like 29 games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 29 games, 4 goals, 8 assists, 152 penalty minutes.
29 games.
Making up for lost time in that boot.
Just mad.
But we had fun.
Cranky from not getting good sleep. And
we had fun. So, Mac, listen.
I love that. That's the reason to start a hockey fight. It's like, I had a bad night's sleep last night. Someone's fucking getting it.
And they had some guys who could throw them, too.
I will, before we...
I just got one question.
Oh, you want to...
No, just one left. You go.
Okay, because I just want to get into after your year with St. John's, you went to Providence. And
it's an important day for Mike.
I'm here in a Bruins blouse here this evening. I'm very excited for the game tonight. That by the time anybody hears this, will have been over, and you'll know whether I'm crying or hungover or what kind of state I'm in. But one thing that I kind of want to take on while you're here is one of your teammates in Providence that year was Mr. Tim Thomas, and word is that he's the banner captain tonight for the Bruins, going to be swinging that banner ahead of Game 7. What was your time like in Providence, and was your last pro year? Like, what was your kind of takeaway from there? And do you have any crazy Tim Thomas stories? Because I hear there's a bunch of crazy Tim Thomas stories.
You know what, Providence. One of my favorite. It was Providence best restaurants in the American League. One thing I remember in very very nice downtown.
Besides the Big R, right?
Sorry.
Besides the Big R, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Tim Thomas, Timmy, good guy. I know all that stuff kind of came out a little bit later when they won the cup and all his. Political views, but you know what? When I played with the guy, he was a little eccentric. But there's all kinds of those guys in the game, and I mean, hey, whatever blows your hair back. But I mean, he was a good guy. He was a good guy when I played with him. But I do remember one little funny thing is when me and Reacher were at practice one day, and he comes back from Europe, and he had all this goofy European gear on because we didn't have a goalie in the American League that year. Literally, we started in training camp, but they didn't have a goalie sign. So that's actually how they got him, which was very lucky. They got him back from Europe. He was already over in Europe for like 5 years, I think, when they got him.
Yeah, I think you guys had 8 different goalies that year.
Sorry?
I think it looks like you guys had 8 different goalies that year, including former guest Andrew Raycroft.
Yeah, exactly right.
Oh. Yeah.
And then he came to us from Europe, and I remember Reacher and I laughed, and we thought he stunk, right? Couldn't stop nothing.
Wow, yeah.
After he got adjusted down there, he did well, and I think I laughed. I think it was the next year maybe that he went up. So, but no, Timmy Thomas was a good guy. I don't. Yeah.
And do you have a pick? Like I said, everybody will know by the time tomorrow rolls around. You got the Bruins?
Well, me and my son, we did a little pool to start. Pick all the 8 brackets. I got 7 of them wrong. So
yeah, me too.
I think everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah, it's a year where not a lot of people's brackets survived.
I picked Tampa Bay, and Las Vegas in the finals. So I think tonight you got to go with Boston on home ice. I would think. If I was betting money, that's right. I would go Boston.
I'd kind of prefer if St. Louis won, but if I had like, someone gave me this money,
guys,
I gotta bet
I'm right here. I'm right here.
You're a fan. I don't give a fuck. What, am I going to offend you? It's not like saying you're fucking ugly or something. I'm saying you're a fucking Bruins fan.
I think Mike would prefer that insult than that, actually.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and joke about it. Actually, I am going to joke about it. I'm not going to lie about it.
There you go.
And for probably the only reason I think he's a great player, but I don't really like Marchand that much. I'd probably fight him if I fought. And that might be what's swaying it because I love Chara, but St. Louis has not won, and I'd love to see him win that. And, if Boston wins, though, it's not the end of the world. I love the game that they play. And like I said...
I always appreciate seeing a guy in his 40s be able to lift the cup. Very hard to do.
Yeah.
And that's a
great.
big thing for me.
It wouldn't be the end of the world if they win. And I just, I'd prefer Marchand not to win another one and have some guys, there you go. Like I'll pick Peter Angelo. There you go. Good guy, hasn't got a cup. But now, listen, I have one more question.
Hey, Brian.
0506, that was Providence. Now, you have a decent year, Mac. In terms of if you're, you and I often had a goal to play on the first line, second line, whatever. But if you're a third liner, you get 13 goals, 15 assists, very respectable, 132 penalty minutes. That's not a bad year at all. Certainly not a year.
32. I was 32.
You were 32 years old. So Mac.
Yeah, I was 31 years old or 32 there, right? That was my third. Yeah. That was my 13th year. So like I retired when I was 32.
But my question is, a lot of people, like that's a resume. So. Those numbers, even if only 0506 in the AHL, can get you six figures overseas, and a lot of guys milk it out and they play over there. And very rarely, Asham is one. Linger would be the under end of the spectrum. Linger played in every league in North America. Not in North America. Linger played in every league in the world that he possibly could. He's just simply running out of time, or I'm sure he'll be in Australia next year.
China.
Well, what was that decision? Like, because you could have easily kept playing. You could have been. I'll give you some options in the coach. You could have been a player coach for close to six figures. Overseas, I'm sure you could have gone to one of those leagues and played 40 odd games, not having to fight, and made 90,000, 100,000, at least.
My son was born that year. My son's mother. We were expecting my son, and I was tired of the game. You know what I mean? I was didn't really fucking like it anymore. I was tired of just everything. Not so much even the fighting, but just the thought of going to Europe and getting on buses again, I think played on my mind the most. Yeah. And then my personal stuff, right? I came out at the end of there. I had some stuff there. I had a fucking, that was coming after 15 or 18 years of playing hockey. I don't know if that would have been the best thing for me to go over to Russia by myself when I had a little boy over here or not. Might not have fucking came back.
And didn't you get into you started working a little bit, right? Like if I know you got into a bit of real estate and shit like that, or am I wrong?
Yeah, I still kind of do the same thing, real estate, and I stay involved with hockey a little bit down here, the minor hockey, and my son's hockey. I coach his team and whatnot. He's 12. I would like to go back into the game actually in a couple of years and maybe coach and start out at the bottom and see if we can plug away. I'd like to get my son, he'll be 13 or he'll be 50 in another 3 years or so. So I'd like to kind of stay involved and stay around here till then. And then I don't know what we'll do.
That was my next question. I just, because, you're, much as St. John's, Mount Pearl, but Newfoundland is a part of me. You're one of those faces of PEI / Charlottetown, but PEI in general. And just curious. But now, listen, if who knows, who can fucking tell the future? I don't know where I'll be tomorrow, J-Mac, but I hope I'm there July 11th and 12th in Charlottetown for the Boys and Girls Club golf tournaments back on the go. Trevor Bird asked me to go over. So I'm going to go over on Thursday, Friday. I'm coming back Saturday because I got some shit to do around here. But if you can possibly get there, J-Mac, I'd love to see you, especially if Jagger's with you. The last time I saw him, he was like 4 or 5 years old. It was a long time ago. A lot of time has passed. I'd love to see you. And if not, let's catch up sometime. And it's been great catching up on air, man.
Absolutely, TR. I'll text you anyway, pal. I got your number, and I'll text you out there. And I appreciate you guys having me on. I enjoyed it, boys.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for being so generous with your time today.
Thanks again.
Okay, guys.
And we'll talk soon, J-Mac.
I'll be in touch. Or you shoot me a text when you're on your way to PEI.
Okay, buddy. Penny Posh, maternity wear reimagined, breaking the barriers of style, fit, and comfort that often leave mothers-to-be uninspired in their new wardrobe. Penny Posh's designs have reinvented a clothing category often seen as disposable, temporary, and unattractive. Well, not with Penny Posh. Check it out. A continuous fit maternity collection from bump to bundle and beyond. You can check them out on Twitter at Penny_Posh, on Instagram at Penny Posh_maternity, And of course, on their website, www.pennyposhdesigns.com. Penny Posh Designs, maternity wear reimagined.
All right, and so a couple last things we want to do before we get out of here, and that's I just want to circle back to the game because it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals tonight, and I'm stressed about it. The last Game 7, of course, was also a game I was stressed out about because it was Boston and Vancouver in 2011. It's the last time we hit Game 7 in the Stanley Cup. So I mean, it's always great when you get to a Game 7, but unless you're fucking watching your team and stressing out about it.
Yeah, if you're watching your own team, it gets a little hectic and stressful. But for me, I mean, I won't lie. Going into the finals, there was such a long break. I found it hard to move the needle back up.
That's the thing, man. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about with this is oh baby, oh, I had to turn down the thing. But oh baby, Stanley Cup Final Game 7 is tonight. But also, the Bruins beat the Carolina Hurricanes 27 days ago. That's when the Eastern Conference Final ended. It has been tomorrow will be 4 weeks since the Eastern Conference Final.
That's too long. That's a mess.
This 2-day break for all the travel that was going on. I mean, the fact that there was such a even the Blues, I think, had 9 days off.
9 days and 11 for the. It was 9 days in between rounds. It was far too long. Especially last year, the NHL did something strange that they hadn't done before. Is there was a game that was still in round 1, being played as well as game 1 of round 2 the same night, and I thought that was a garage league move.
So that whole thing is just a fucking mess. But
I've always said it. They play too many fucking games. The answer to all of it is put it down fucking 20 games. Play 60.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll ever get that. The owners want to make their money.
You'll never get it. But
no, but you're right.
That's the answer.
You're right to do it.
A couple of owners are already mad at us now.
But there's a few things going on in the world of the internet, and one of those is tonight with the game coming up. Banner captain for Boston. It's always the thing they do. They usually get a former Bruin, somebody associated with the team, who comes out, waves the banner, waves the flag, gets the crowd riled up. And apparently, Tim Thomas is the guy tonight, which is that's what's happening on Twitter. Everyone's saying
Twitter doesn't get carried away.
That he's trending right now. There's a bunch of stuff going on, saying there's a bunch of rumors going on.
Why is that a surprise?
Well, because he had such a bad departure from the team. He didn't go. He kind of did the. There was a bunch of just animosity and weird shit around the way he opted out of the White House. But then even beyond that...
the ownership issue with him getting paid during the lockout was a big thing.
Yeah.
He's the only guy that collected a paycheck during that lockout, and that was a big thing when it was going on.
Yeah, and then the way he got flipped out of town, he went...
So I think took a year off or whatever?
Took a year off at 39.
Yeah, I mean, after just fighting to get in the league in the first place. You heard from the interview with Jason that he just came back from Europe when he first got into the Bruins. He fought for years to get up through. Yeah.
I didn't know
he was a journeyman, and so the way he took that year off, and again, it was just a bunch of weird things around the way it was handled. So it means that if he's the banner captain tonight, a bunch of shit has been worked out.
I know, but
between him and people involved in that team.
This is why that doesn't surprise me, because I expect a bunch of shit to be worked out that we'll never find out about, because not only are we not even close to the situation, we don't know one person on the inside. We're so far away that our literal only point of view is what someone else writes or is on TV.
Yeah.
Jason just said, my only bit of inside information ever on Tim Thomas was that Jason just said he was a good guy, because the things I read on him, he does seem like a fucking wingnut here and there.
He's a goalie. They're all eccentric. They're all eccentric.
So if he's indeed a good guy at heart, I have no reason not to believe Jason is one of the honest people I know. If he's indeed... and he won a cup in Boston, and Game 7 is about to be played in Boston.
He's the last Conn Smythe winner from the last Bruins Cup win.
I can find a lot of reasons to make up.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And the fact that him coming back, and because there's this perceived animosity, him burying the hatchet over that and coming out to be back with the team says a lot.
That's why it doesn't surprise me.
But there is a fun, your buddy Jimmy Murphy tweeted out, source close to Tim Thomas, just to me just now, this was from an hour ago.
Jimmy would know.
When asked if Tim Thomas is Bruins banner captain tonight, and that source said, news to me, all I know is he FaceTimed with me this morning from Idaho, hope he had a direct flight. So that was an hour ago. show. That was Jimmy's update. But then Bennett Carroll quote tweeted this saying the biggest news here is that Tim Thomas is on the grid enough to trust Apple and FaceTime, which I think is kind of a funny. That was my funny Tim Thomas joke that I heard from that.
I'm trying to think of Idaho and relative to Boston. It can't be that long.
It's not that far, funny, but a direct flight would be a thing. But the other thing that's really cool tonight is apparently David Ortiz, who's in Boston now, recovering from being shot. Apparently, he's up. He's doing well. He apparently took his first steps since getting shot the other day, this afternoon, and so there's a bunch of goodwill coming there because apparently Big Papi's recording a video message that's going to be played pregame as well.
Why wouldn't he? Holy fuck! Give him the cup now, then.
Yeah,
no kidding. Give him the cup.
Someone
now.
like Bill Burr. I was listening to Bill.
Got shot, and he wants to pump it
I was
up.
listening to Bill Burr today, and he said shooting David Ortiz is like shooting Santa Claus. Who the fuck would want to shoot Santa Claus? And I'm like, yeah. And except if Santa Claus's team at a home game, Santa Claus would be doing I said at the very least, as I was driving, I was thinking at the very least we're going to see a video message.
Yeah.
And each game seems to like grab you by the balls. It's just like something. Chara coming out with that fucking cage on made me cry for fuck's sakes, and I'm not even cheering for them. And now you get Big Papi, one of the most beloved sports figures, let alone in Beantown, just got shot from behind.
Yeah.
And right the day that he gets out and he's healing and all the news, the Boston Bruins happen to be playing Game 7. You better fucking believe he'll be doing a video message. Yeah. If I know Big Papi, or I don't, but if I can
the
assume,
legend of Big Papi.
If I know the legend of Big Papi,
the very least I can expect is that he'll probably be the fucking banner waver himself.
That's what I said was like if he's up to it. I mean, that's the guy you fucking want, right?
He would do it,
but I don't know if he can wave a banner recovering from a gunshot wound. It happened during Game 6.
Well, he'd fucking
try. But the other thing that worries me about getting all riled up that way is that Chara coming out for Game 5 with that cage on. They lost that game.
Yeah,
I don't think you
But they were fired up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were fired.
They were fired up, so let's keep them
we're
fired
lucky.
up.
It's Game 7. It's the last game.
It's different,
though.
A cage is different than a shot through the back.
Yeah, fair.
Fair,
in many ways.
Fair bit different.
Ways.
Fair bit different.
You know what's
and
funny?
again, we're saying all this, and by the time anybody hears it, it's all over. We know what happens.
Two things. First one, that's why I never, to this day, because it freaks me out. I don't know if I've said it before, because Wild Bill Hickok, famous gunslinger in the West, got shot through the back, and he had aces over eights. That's why a lot of people have that tattoo, 3 aces and 2 eights, because it's the card. It was the hand. It's called Dead Man's Hand. It's because that's a hand he was holding, and a guy came in and shot him through the back. And I've always, like, even though I know I'm not going to get fucking shot through the back, I don't know that, but I often don't sit with my back to the door. I've had nightmares about it, like being back in the Wild West. And so when I heard, it's completely hypothetical situations, but and to hear that he got shot through the back was fucking insane because who wants to shoot? Unless we find out he's a drug dealer on the side. Which I think
what happened was that he was back on and they didn't realize it was fucking David Ortiz, right?
That's why I suggest everybody, if he had been listening,
tap him on the shoulder, be like, "Are you Big Papi?" Before you shoot somebody.
Someone out there is going to sit not with their back to the door, and it's going to save their lives, hopefully. But the second thing, speaking of Idaho, so a baseball legend just died, Bill Buckner.
Yes.
Bill Buckner, he was the first baseman for the Red Sox when the Mets, who was it, Mookie Wilson? Maybe?
Mookie Wilson, ball off the pebble.
It was a ground ball, an easy ground ball that I'm not exaggerating that my mother would have had. My mother would have had this. Okay, but Bill Buckner also is a fucking legend, one of the best players, a Hall of Fame guy. Fucking ball goes through his legs. The curse of the fucking Bambino sticks. Boston doesn't win it till the 2000s. That was back in when, 86?
It was Game 6 of 85.
85.
Series. Yeah, they ended up losing. He was the first baseman. Ground ball to him. If he picks up the ball, touches the bag, game over.
Game over, but he didn't, and then they lose.
Ball
on
off the pedal. They lose the game. They lose the next game. They don't win again for another 19
And
years.
that was in the middle of the curse of the Bambino, which, when the Red Sox traded Babe Ruth to the Yankees in 1924 or whatever it was, the Red Sox hadn't won, and the Yankees went on to win like 20-odd times. So it was this big story in the curse of the Bambino. But so speaking of Idaho, so I played in Idaho in 2001, 2002 for the Idaho Steelheads. And I went to
great team name.
a really great name and great team. it's in the middle of nowhere really. So there's no sports teams other than Boise State Broncos. A football team was in our town, but the Boise State's not pro. It's good to watch. University, but closest to us was like Salt Lake City, maybe 4 hours away. There was really nothing. So we were close to Sun Valley. So like a lot of our games, Bruce Willis to me more at the time were. I remember seeing. Mrs. Robinson, The Graduate, Dustin Hoffman.
Oh, I was going to say Anne Bancroft.
Yeah, so we go to this one event. So it was, and we had a season ticket booster club that was second to none in the East Coast League, West Coast League at the time they combined. But we would because we were a nice little place. Our rink was right in the center of downtown, kind of like Mile 1, a little bit smaller than Mile 1, but we were sold out every night because it was the thing to do, right?
Yeah.
So we go to we meet the billets and the boosters, and not billets, the booster club and all those guys, and it often starts on these teams with a golf tournament at the start of the year. So I'm golfing with, and I'm a big music fan. 60s are my favorite era. And there's a band called Paul Revere and the Raiders. And Paul Revere was actually the drummer. He wasn't even the singer, but Paul Revere and the Raiders. And they had hits. Just Like Me was one of their huge hits. And they had a bunch more. Anyway, without just listing off hits that no one's heard, do yourself, at least go to Spotify and listen to their top 5 songs, whatever. A, they're a great band, but B, I didn't expect Paul Revere to be one of the boosters. So I'm golfing with him, and he says, "That's nothing." And we're teeing off for like hole 3. It was early on. He said, "That's nothing. Look over there." And I look over. I'm like, "Who the fuck's that?" I don't know who it is. And I know baseball. And he says, "That's Bill Buckner." And so Bill Buckner just passed away, by the way. So I guess I'm just giving him a shout out. So he's behind me. Turns out he got so much shit, not only in Boston, but from fans all over. He didn't want to live there anymore. And I'm not knocking Boston when I say that. This would happen anywhere. You get enough people in any city that happened in, and he just wanted away from it.
A gimme ground ball that's going to end a 60-year drought is going to get some hate anywhere.
And he even said, so he was a great guy. I didn't want to bring it up. He's behind me, and without saying anything, Mike, he looks at me and goes, yeah, I got some horses now in Idaho, and I watch hockey. And I'm going, wow. Yeah. So I'm going, this guy's fucking wicked. So I sit down, and I'm having beers, and again, I don't want to bring it up, but Bill Buckner, and I know Dad's a diehard Yankees fan, so I grew up knowing everybody on both those teams, if nothing else, and the Jays. As a baseball fan, but often you forget about guys on San Diego when you're growing up in Mount Pearl. But if your dad watches fucking the American League East, a lot. Yeah, except for Tony Gwynn, you're right. That's great. He's one of my favorites. But anyway, so I knew all about Buckner, and my memory outside of that, because that wasn't my only memory of Buckner. Buckner was like an unbelievable player. He was like a 5-time All-Star, I think, just a great player. So I was kind of happy to meet, like, I want to say one of my idols because he was for the opposition, but I respect a fucking guy who's that good at sports. And anyway, we got talking, and I sat down, and I don't remember bringing it up, but he just said, "Yeah, trust me." He goes, "It wasn't all bad." He goes, "I just didn't want to be like a lot of people hugged me and felt bad for me, but he said they just bring it up all the time." And he said, "Here, nobody brings it up." It was like, wow. So I had him pictured after that. Like people talk to me about it, and they'll think maybe that.
And it was the 86 World Series, by the way. I was
86,
wrong.
Okay, I thought so. That he kind of went out there to be a hermit and fall off the face of the earth. I don't think it was quite that, and a lot of people act like it was such animosity from the fans and everything, but it was more just being in the public profile and having to talk about it every day.
Yeah.
Because he was just like, a lot of people high-five me. A lot of people hug me.
I mean, it's noted here. He came back. He finished his career in Boston after. He came back in 90 and received a standing ovation from the crowd during player introduction at the home opener. People kind of went, I guess we get it. It wasn't your fault. It was a fucking curse.
I think he just seemed like a guy that wanted to get away from the topic. He was very grounded, though, and a great guy.
Well, I guess it's like the opposite of the Paul Henderson goal. Like, that's all Paul Henderson ever hears about. Is that he played how many games in the NHL? But
you don't think he hears about tying Terry Ryan Sr. for the goal lead on the Hamilton Red Wings?
I tell you, I met him once, but if I ever run into him again,
I bet he does if he ever runs into Terry Ryan Sr.
Yeah, that's true. And
I'll tell you this: if I ever run into him again, I won't ask him about the goal. It'll be that.
But anyway, that was my last thing. Buckner died a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. But
I wanted to say that because he was great, and I'll never forget when he just fucking looked at me and said, "Yeah, I raise horses now in Idaho, and I watch hockey.
So maybe that's how Tim Thomas ended up in Idaho. You go there to escape.
To escape Boston, yeah, it's where you go. But
he probably got a tip from him.
But
Kicks. That's another great song from Paul Revere. Kicks.
Yeah.
The first anti-drug song, actually. Kicks just keep getting harder to find. He's talking to a girl who's a little bit into the dope. And the first anti-drug song that I know of, and if I know my Time Life music DVDs, I'm right. I often get lost when I go home in those.
Oh, dude.
Smoke a bat and I just go into like fucking Woodstock mode.
The commercials for those, I think, is like those like long infomercials.
Oh, yes.
For those Time Life like music stuff is why I'm so good at the fucking game. Like when we were playing Good Friday and we were in the room and you were just playing stuff and I was just like knocking down all these obscure fucking songs and you're like, how do you know this? And it's like, well, I grew up loving 50s and 60s music.
Sure,
and
you were pretty impressive.
And when
I don't know many my age or even close that can beat me at that quick at the 60s game, mind you.
Yeah,
maybe now.
And we played all fucking night. But it was like whenever that was one of those things where like when you used to change through the channels, I couldn't find anything else on, but that fucking infomercial was on, I'd leave it on and it would just fucking repeat. And so I just get the songs in my head and they named the fucking tune and who it was by and all that shit.
Don't you find that a lot of times when someone asks me who sings something, my memory is because I'm reading a CD that I put on in my car so many times, and you end up. But I find a lot of that is lost now. Like we were forced because there was no computer ending, so I had to read all the album. I had to listen to every song. So. All the albums you actually listened to them all as an album.
Yeah.
I find that, and I got a 9-year-old now and a 20-year-old stepson, and both of their approaches to music, though different, and they like different things, neither one of them are into albums. Whereas, if Penny Lane will listen to an album and not realize it because she'll just let her playlist go, and I'm like, this is the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper, and she knows the songs.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's 9. That's young. But when I was 9, though, I knew. Like I remember, it didn't have to be Sgt. Pepper, but Huey Lewis had a fucking album called Sports. You got it. Right, and even that spoke to me because that's a package in my head of all those songs.
And all those guys playing in the fucking pool hall on the cover and shit, right?
Right, whereas now you'd probably hear I Want a New Drug and put it on a playlist with Huey Lewis songs.
Yeah, that's the
and
one
not
hit,
realize
big hit.
package them all together.
Yeah.
And you've got a Huey Lewis playlist, but you would lose the flavor of the album.
So, and the other one that
Not
always
the
got
first
me
time
was
Huey
like
Lewis got brought up on the show.
true.
Actually,
Huey Lewis.
But another cool thing about that kind of era, especially like cassettes more than anything else, was like it was not like you always had compilation. Like you'd always have like mixtapes that were either made or you bought a compilation that was like a various artist thing, and you'd put it on in the car. And there was no fast forwarding, there was no skipping to the next track. You just listened to the whole thing. And if I was driving around as a kid with like in my aunt's car and she's listening to some compilation she just picked up from some K-Tel thing she got at Walmart.
Yeah.
And she's just it's got all these like cool old like one-hit wonders from the 60s on it. And I'm like, who's this?
But then
and
you
who's
get
that?
into it.
And then you get like just deep dive into it, man.
Imagine me, the first Fleetwood Mac song that I heard that I was knowledge of that was Fleetwood Mac was Little Lies. Tell me lies, tell me
sweet
so
little
how
lies,
fucking surprised was I when I get in, there's also bands like that or you'll hear like It's Raining Again by Supertramp and go, that's not bad.
Yeah.
And then you put on the album, you're like, fuck, Goodbye Stranger.
Yeah.
Enough said, it's just good enough just for this.
Yeah.
But it would force you to get into all this stuff and there was no escaping like there would be on Spotify. Okay, I got the album, I'm listening to the record. I might as well hear the next song, right?
Oh man, well I can even something like the Beatles anthologies like came out in the mid 90s and like I used to devour especially the first two because the age I was when they came out, those first two anthologies were more of like the type of Beatles I was into at the time. Like the later stuff was a little bit weird for me at that age, which is fair, right?
Another thing I love about the Beatles too, there's stages for each
Anybody who says they don't like the Beatles just doesn't listen to enough Beatles because there's a song for fucking everybody. But one after 909,
literally say that to me today.
There's the song One After 909 is on Let It Be.
Yeah,
great tune. But I always I guess I just never even when I came back to it, it didn't click with me for the longest time. But One After 909 is on the first anthology because it was one of the first fucking songs they ever wrote.
Yeah,
and then they
dug
it
that
back
in
out.
Hamburg a lot.
Yeah, and then they dug it back out and completely rearranged it. It sounds totally different. Yeah. But it took me years to be like, oh fuck, that's that tune I used to listen to all the fucking time. I
love when that happens. Isn't it? It feels like
there's
an epiphany
4
moment.
different versions of it that all have that same Mercy beat early sounds like I saw her standing there. It has that kind of beat to it, and then all of a sudden 8 years later, they put it on their last record, and it's a totally different song, but still a fucking jam.
I will say this: there's two, and I find a lot of my younger buddies that play in my hockey team, it's different methods of listening. So I'm that way, and I get overwhelmed because when I find like Jeremy Charles' father-in-law, Sarah Parker's father, Dennis Parker, great blues musician from here.
Wait. That's,
Whoa!
I didn't know that was Sarah's dad.
His new album is Sarah singing on it with him. It sounds unbelievable. It's as good as
know that.
That's Sarah's dad.
Jesus,
it's fucking
I had
wild.
no idea. I've known Dennis for years. He's fucking fantastic.
Dennis is awesome. Dennis came over in the early 70s. Actually, we got a couple of his 45s. But we'll often talk music. I'll go over to Jeremy's. Jeremy has a lot of vinyl as well.
Yeah.
So, and you know, it's great because he's into the blues, and like I know the rock and roll part. So Eric Clapton would talk about, say, Robert Johnson, and McCartney would talk about a lot of the early blues legends, and he brings up just like last year, he brings up this guy Blind Lemon Jefferson, and Blind Lemon Jefferson, it is this big mystery. He's down south, and he played. They called it Texas blues, but they never had a record of him playing in Texas, other than like being picked up on the side of the road in like 1922. And there's a story about him coming in loaded and just playing like kind of like the Devil Went Down to Georgia kind of songs or stories. Yeah. Then he comes over to New Orleans and he gets pretty popular. But this is in the 20s. This is before a lot of people that get all this credit, and so Dennis will get me into that, and a lot of the things he gets me into, I can't find the record. But that's when I go to Spotify, and it'll be on there, and it's good for that reason.
Yeah.
So I don't think a lot of young kids would even think to do it like that. But for me, and I'll come across it and go, holy, it's almost overwhelming to me because I'm like, okay, now I got to listen to every single Blind Lemon Jefferson song, and I got to because I'm getting overwhelmed. I'm starting to go, I can hear Bob Dylan in this. Of course I can. And I can hear Pete Seeger in this, but fuck, Pete Seeger learned from him. How weird is that? Like, and it'll start opening your mind to so many things. And that's why I've often say to people, like, music, I often find that people say if they like only a certain genre, you're not looking hard enough. I think there's some stuff in most genres, even if you have a little bit of respect for the history of it, that you'll probably like. And the last thing I'll say when it comes to that is, like you said, the Beatles, there's a song for everybody. I made sure I love the Beatles. I don't try to sway my daughter's or my stepson's views in too many ways. I don't think it can be hard to get them into the Beatles, though. It's a bad thing. So I'd always have it on in the background and everything, right? Yeah. So when Penny Lane made her, and I didn't tell her what any of the songs are about, they're on there for the benefit of Mr. Kite to a little girl. Sounds like it's a circus theme, right?
Yeah.
For example.
So does Bang Bang Maxwell's Silver Hammer.
Yeah, right. And there's a lot of those.
That it's about murder. Okay,
cool. Right? You're not thinking that.
It's about a serial killer. Great little peppy tune about a serial killer.
And there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
But she gravitated, like, so when she was making her playlist, she's like 4 years old with me. Like her first songs were, I like Octopus's Garden. And I like Here Comes the Sun. And then Rocky Raccoon, right? It had a little, so.
Again, about a murder.
Yeah, I know. But to her, and she's hearing that, she hears about a little cartoon raccoon in her head or whatever.
Yeah.
And then she's hearing Octopus's Garden. And there's another, with a little help from my friends, Ringo. Like some of these are almost.
And you realize they're all fucking Ringo songs.
Yeah, there's two Ringos right there.
That's
all of his songs.
Two, yeah.
All of his songs.
There was another Ringo that's one of her favorites too. She loves.
Oh, Yellow Submarine.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I was going. I forgot, and I wouldn't have said it. Yellow Submarine.
Yeah.
And it's the way these are presented. And then, of course, the Yellow Submarine, I said, I got to show her the cartoon if she really likes the Beatles. And she's going to. So I did. But then, of course, now she's 9, and now she realizes what Penny Lane's about. I'm not saying that she's going to get deep, but she understands that it's about a street that they grew up on, and she understands the different Beatles. And now she's starting to go, well, that's a pretty cool song. I want to hold your hand. And I'll say, they sang that on Ed Sullivan. I'll show her. It's stages, but the first one, her ear was to pick up, and they do. They present those to kids. I often forget them.
I remember distinctly being like a huge Beatles fan when I was a little kid. We talked about this before. I was really into, when I was like a small child, into Buddy Holly and the Beatles from a very early point. And I was
Tom Petty.
That's fucking cool. But I distinctly remember
the same umbrella, really.
I distinctly remember. I distinctly remember whatever. I can't remember what grade it was, if it was kindergarten or grade 1 or 2. But there was this yellow music books that when you go into music class, they were all on the chairs. Everybody picked it up, and you went from the same songbook. And that songbook had Yellow Submarine and Octopus's Garden in it.
Oh yeah,
that book didn't make it up to the Lab West curriculum.
No, but well, it was also fucking 5 years later. But that was part of our curriculum in primary school in the late 80s, early 90s were Beatles tunes. And and talking about, I know we went off on a fucking tangent about top 40. Can you imagine any fucking songs from right now that you're hearing on like popular music on the radio. Can you imagine hearing any of it in a fucking classroom in 20 years?
No. And I can also, I still think there's Beatles songs that would still sound fresh on the radio now.
Oh, yeah.
Where a lot of the stuff from that time, it's great, but it wouldn't sound overly fresh. It's great. Like I'm including the Who and the Stones and all that stuff, but there's still a song like A Day in the Life would go, oh my fucking
well, like
God,
The
what did I
Stones
just
are
hear?
both still on
Or even
tour.
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds if you want catchy. Maybe that's bad for the radio.
What's the tune? There was one of the tunes that has like the really heavy Indian influence that sounds like a fucking like
Norwegian Wood?
No.
Within You Without You.
Within You Without You. It was featured in fucking Mad Men a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it blew up because people are like, "Who the fuck?" Like, because it's
doesn't
like
sound
it's
at
got
all
this
like-
cool
yeah.
kind of trancey, like it's got kind of like a dance vibe to it. Like it sounds like something you'd hear at a rave at fucking 3:30 in the morning.
That's a better example than anything I use.
And yeah,
that would still sound fucking fresh on the radio.
And that was it. But that was the thing, was when it came on, there were like when it came on that episode of Mad Men a couple years ago, there were people who just didn't know it was the Beatles and were like, "What the fuck is this jam?" Like they thought it was a current dance track, and they were just blown away that it was a fucking Beatles tune off of. What's that on? Is that on the? Is that on fucking?
That's on Pepper.
It's on Pepper.
Yeah.
If it's an Indian dance tune.
No, because there's a bunch of weird shit, like only a Northern Song and some other weird shit's on Magical Mystery Tour.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't sure if it was on
That
Magical
is a
Mystery
weird
Tour.
one.
Yeah.
I almost forget that that's a Beatles album.
It's the only one that I'm not like. It's one of those ones that like if I'm listening to the Beatles like canon and will listen sometimes, go from Please Please Me right on through. Every now and then I'll just like skip Magical Mystery Tour. I'll just like leave it out. It's like
I find it really hard to go from like Revolver, Rubber Soul, and then put that on. That's an example of that would work in the Spotify world. There's a couple of songs on there that I'd pick, but I don't even know if I've ever once listened start to finish. I know the songs that are on it.
Yeah.
I might have done it to sample it when I was 10. But
I have, because it was a time like probably 10 or 12 years ago when I first got an iPod that I had all the Beatles
in a row.
And I listened to them all in a row. And that I think was the first time I ever listened to that record start to finish. There was one other thing I was going to, I know I should be fucking worried about hockey right now.
Well,
but,
this is the end, though. I don't mind this at the end.
distraction, Mike. You
But-
need this to calm down.
But can we talk for just a second?
Good leadership by Terry.
Can we talk just for a second about what a fucking transition record is, Help is, between Rubber Soul and Revolver?
Of course.
Because holy fuck, like it's a soundtrack. And it's not only that fucking good. I mean, essentially, Rubber Soul's an acoustic record, and Revolver's an electric record.
And they both try to
Help,
stretch boundaries on each side, right?
And Help just fits like so snugly in between those two as just the fucking handoff of the baton. And it was just a throwaway soundtrack to like a movie they were making.
Just a throwaway. And how about, there's a lot I love about Help. My favorite lasting part of the... my favorite song, I hate to even say that favorite song, but I love I Need You. I'm in an I Need You phase.
I Need You, yeah.
With,
And that's, you go through George Harrison phases.
Yeah.
There's times where you just get really fucking into George Harrison phases. I still think my favorite off Help might be...
And the video with
I don't
Ringo
know.
with the dart in his mouth the whole time. He's playing drums.
Yeah.
Just go back and watch. I think it's the I Need You video. It definitely is the I Need You
Yeah.
video. He's drumming and he just got the cigarette and he's not even puffing on it. It's just smoking. It's just that the paper is smoking in his mouth the entire time, and he's playing. And it's always fun little stories. The Beatles movies, I highly encourage going to watch them, or going to watch them.
They still show up in cinemas.
They do actually,
Yeah,
and I went
throwback,
whenever
yeah.
they do. I go to watch, but it's not to me. It's like watching a bit of history. It's not even what's happening. They're all little fun little stories, but it shows you a side. Not everything was like that. Like George Thorogood did. Type the next time you're on YouTube, George Thorogood Beatles, and see what he has to say about it. And he says, it was just like the world woke up in Technicolor. He said, I woke up and the world was in Technicolor. They're the first people I saw that were happy.
Yeah.
He said they were always happy. And a lot of times you got to realize when you're watching Help and those stories and the cute and the girls going after him, it's kind of real, but the context of where the world was at that time, and there was a lot of uncertainty, and later on, and I guess, there's not too many times in the 20th century there wasn't some kind of war happening, but, there was a lot of tension and a lot of uncertainty, and, I think the Beatles, by wearing their hair long and by taking chances and writing their own music and doing their own thing, I think is, obviously directly related to Woodstock, but I don't think, all that, the flower power, the civil rights movement would have been happening, but I think it was definitely pushed along. And just basically people, artists using their own minds. Like I said, I love Buddy Holly, Mike, but if you go back and look, there wasn't a whole lot of people writing their own music. I love him for that reason.
Yeah.
He's one of the first that did it.
Yeah.
But, the Beatles did it. It started to be normal. But that was certainly not normal at the time.
No.
The first band to play a stadium. Elvis was playing in auditoriums.
And they had to invent PA speakers for the Beatles. They had to, modern public address exists because of the Beatles.
Yeah.
It's why they stopped touring. It's because the crowds were getting too loud. And speakers weren't catching up to how loud it needed to be. And that's part of the reason they fucking stopped.
Their last big show, Shea Stadium, was that the last one? Yeah, I thought so.
And then
that's the episode of Mad Men, by the way, that's featured on. He's sending his daughter to Shea Stadium to see the Beatles. And I remember when I tuned into it, all I thought was people actually saw the Beatles. That was the mind that.
Well, that's the thing. It's one of those weird things that now you think of it as such a long time ago. But John Lennon only died, almost 3 years before I was born. We were that close to overlap. And the same thing. Elvis was only a couple years before that.
I was 3. I didn't realize what was happening, but I remember everybody being fucking shocked. And
the way he died too.
Yeah. But and the other thing, just so many, when people ask, the first band to put out album and album art and words on the album, Sgt. Pepper's the first album ever that has the lyrics on the back.
Yeah,
and I did not know that. As a kid, that was one of the biggest things for me because I didn't have so I would buy CDs.
How I learned to read.
I would buy CDs hand over fist. If I ever got any money for birthdays or this or that or odd jobs or whatever, CDs, that's where it always went. But I never had a vehicle with a CD player in it until I was well into my 20s. So I would get a ride with my folks as a kid, and there would always be tape decks or whatever, and I would wait until I got home. So it's about a 9 or 10 minute drive. But when you're a kid, you can rifle through the lyric book, and I'd read it all, the special thanks to, the engineered notes, the producers and stuff like that. So that was the lyrics though were always a huge thing. I did not know that.
So picture this, before all that, if you look at the Rolling Stone top 500 albums ever, I think the first one shows up by Elvis is called Mystery Train, but Elvis had no say in any of that. They were just packaged. They were songs. He had nothing. He just good-looking face on the front. Obviously, it's fucking Elvis. It doesn't take a genius. And they picked the song. I mean, he didn't even write most of his songs. The only one I know that he co-wrote was one of his best now, In the Ghetto. He wanted to write a lot of them.
That's my go-to for karaoke.
It's great. But, the Beatles ripped the face off all that way of thinking, and they made the artists much more in touch with their own work. And then Dylan came along in 1964, and Dylan is influencing the Beatles, and they all work together. So all of a sudden, everybody's hair is long, and everybody's saying, you know what? Maybe I'm going to think about this. I'm going to do my own fucking thing, And it to me, that's why it transcends music. It's beyond music. It's beyond sports. It's beyond anything. The world needed it at that time. And, it brought the world together. The message was love. I love Nirvana. But the message wasn't love, was it?
No.
Right? But when all that happened, I mean, and the people that fucking grew as artists out of that are insane.
What I've heard you drop the Rolling Stone 500 songs of all time several times. It's just come up
albums, but songs,
songs on the 500 songs list. What is the highest charting Beatles song, and what number does it come in at?
Okay, so if it's songs, because I know the albums list. If it's songs, number one is either going to be, I'm guessing, Bob Dylan or the Rolling Stones.
I'll give you a hint. Kind of both.
Kind of both?
That it's Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan.
Okay. Like a Rolling Stone. It's Satisfaction also is right up there.
That's number 2.
Is it? Okay. Yep. Now I'm not looking. You get the computer in your face.
I got it in front of me. Yep.
There's a level of legitimacy to what I'm saying. I'm familiar with good music. I wasn't aware of this list. So you're asking me the highest one for the Beatles.
Yep.
And what would that be?
Uh-huh.
I'm going to guess Yesterday.
Now, is it the top? What are we looking at? Because the most important song on the most important album ever would be A Day in the Life. I don't think you could argue that.
It's just it's not going that direction. It's not saying it's just saying what is of the it's basically the best popular music of the.
Hey Jude.
Yes. What number is it?
Fuck me. So there's that. There's 2 of those.
Yeah.
It can't have slipped out of the top 10. You can't have the best band ever by most critical thinkers out of the top 10. If you ask me how many, and it's not third, then it can't be third, or you would have said it. Fifth.
It is 8th.
8th. Okay.
Third
What's
is
ahead of it?
Imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can
So the
tell you.
Beatles get in there.
That's
Third is
fair.
Imagine. 4 is What's Going On by Marvin Gaye.
Yeah, no problem with any of that.
5 is Respect by Aretha Franklin.
Wicked. Yeah. Great.
6th is Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys.
Unbelievable.
7 is Johnny Be Good.
Fucking unbelievable.
8 is Hey Jude. And then Smells Like Teen Spirit and What I Say by Ray Charles round at the top 10.
Yeah, you know what I compare that to? It's like if Tomas Hertel scored the nicest goal of the year for the San Jose Sharks, but overall Wayne Gretzky had just way more goals,
Yeah.
or Alexander Ovechkin, let's say now.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, the
they-
Beatles have the most. They have 24 appearances on the list, the
Yeah.
most by anybody. 13 is Yesterday.
Yeah,
and
I
so
think
that's
it's more
3
albums.
songs
Now in the-
written by John Lennon, written or co-written by
Now
John
I'll
Lennon
tell you one
in the
thing.
top 13.
As I'm looking at you, I'm not looking at a piece of paper. I'm not looking at anything. Look at the top albums, and the Beatles have 5 of the top 10. 5. And their 6th is closely outside of that. I can't remember. Now, of course, we're just going with a rating system. But who are these people that voted? They're all artists, right? Like people say, well, these Rolling Stone music critics, they're not. Rolling Stone doesn't have fucking 1,000 music critics to play, to judge. These are all people that, it's people that are involved in the business, and most of them are artists themselves. And I will say Sgt. Pepper is number 1. But then we got in there somewhere's Rubber Soul, Revolver, and the White Album for sure. Right?
Yeah.
In the top
10? Yes. Yeah. So number 1 is Sgt. Pepper. Number 2 is Pet Sounds by the
Look at
Beach
that.
Boys.
3 might be What's Going On.
3 is Revolver.
Okay, 3's Revolver.
4 is Highway 61 Revisited by Bob Dylan.
Beautiful choice.
5 is Rubber Soul.
Yeah.
6 is What's Going On.
Knew it was up there.
7 is Rolling Stones Exile on Main Street.
Nice.
8 is London Calling by The Clash.
Wow, that's a
can't argue
high
with that,
one.
though.
9 is Blonde on Blonde. And number 10 is The White Album.
Yeah.
And then number 11
Yeah,
is The Sun Sessions.
London,
Elvis Presley's Sun
And
Sessions.
close to that. Like the Beatles also, because there's one that you never.
And The
Abbey
Sun
Road.
Sessions is a compilation.
Okay, so where's Abbey Road? 15? Because right there's going to be another
14.
one. 14. Exactly. The Beatles. Those albums you cannot. You couldn't put them because what they did for music. Even if you listen to Abbey Road from like track 3 to like track 11, it's just one big mash of songs, and it goes back into this song. It'll freak you the fuck out. Try doing it stoned. Smoke a joint and listen to Abbey Road. That'll freak you out more than all of them.
Oh, man.
The Abbey Road is to me more of a concept album than Sgt. Pepper. It starts going like one song goes into another.
I mean,
and
well,
it'll
that's the
come
thing.
back.
The whole back side of it is one track.
I love it.
technically, right? It's a suite. But it's incredible. But on that note, we're coming up on 3 hours.
I was going to say, fellas, I've got to run.
We got some stuff coming up tonight that I want to pay attention to.
This
So,
is great, though. What
this
your
is wicked.
vitals
We gotta-
must be. Must be the lowest you've had here.
82. But this has been great.
This is.
It's killing me. I want like
London
if I didn't
Calling
have
up
shit-
that high. I gotta get this in. London Calling. I mentioned that I'd get a CD and read the lyrics flat out
Yeah.
too. London Calling is one of those CDs.
Oh, yeah,
I got
that's
that when
great.
I was in the 5th grade.
Which again-
I got into it a couple years ago. We got
Yeah.
the DVD. Senior got the DVD. Boys, you got to come in on a Friday night
got to.
sometime.
We got to.
And Senior was getting me into the Clash. Like I knew of the Clash. I knew they were really important.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how important.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
a couple
yeah,
years
yeah.
ago, he got me right into it. He gave me a book. I forget the fucking name. I think the book is called London Calling. In any case, highly recommend both.
You
And
know
we'll
what
talk
I'm
about
shocked by
To
here
Pimp
as
a
I'm
Butterfly
looking.
next time.
You know what I'm shocked about?
Saw that live. eh?
Looking through this, I went back as far as 40.
Huh?
And you know who doesn't make an appearance in the top 40 at all?
Tom Petty.
The
Enya.
Kinks. The Kinks. I figured the
I don't
Kinks,
know. I don't know
but
any
I
of the
guess
Kinks.
it's like, the Kinks are probably like, I don't
The
know.
Kinks, though, would have only
I
had
don't
so
think-
many shots because they had a couple of real.
I don't know if they're like an album band,
Yeah.
like
My favorite album by the Kinks, I encourage you, you will never have heard of it. It's called Schoolboys in Disgrace. And it came out, Come Dancing might be on that, their 1980 hit. But it's great, guys. So it's a concept album, and it takes you through the high school experience of a kid. So and in the beginning, he's coming into grade 9.
Yeah, Come Dancing would be on that, wouldn't it be?
I think.
No, it's not.
It's not on there?
It is not.
Okay, but anyway, Jack the Idiot Dunce is on there, isn't it?
Yep.
Jack the Idiot Dunce.
Track 2.
Now you wouldn't be able to have a song called Jack the Idiot Dunce, but Jack the Idiot Dunce was the dunce in school, and he got picked on. But then he comes back and ends up getting all the chicks. And then it keeps going. I'm telling you right now, you'll love that album for the story as much as anything, and I still don't know why no one fucking knows it. I really don't. It's not on any list. I've never heard a classic rock fan talk about it. I've brought it up to people like Chris LeDrew, who's like a major he knows everything there is to know about music from that era, and he'll be like, what? Schoolboy's in Disgrace.
Hell of an album artwork, though.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
great.
it.
It's great.
Yeah.
I'm just looking here. I'm just trying to...
The
the Kinks are the Village Green Preservation Society.
You might know the last song gets played at the odd high school reunion, even though or because it says gather around. They're all gathering around, right, and they're holding hands, and they're all on their way out of high school. They've experienced it all together. It's a very powerful fucking song message. I've heard it. The only place I've heard it is at like graduations and stuff, and still people never bring up the fact it's the Kinks.
Yeah.
Well, it can't be the Kinks because there isn't a band called the Kinks.
Well, there probably is, but they're probably in just somebody's fucking basement somewhere.
Although there's an idea,
much
the
like us,
Kinks.
the Kinks. If we don't go with third band in, that's what we'll do, is the Kinks. But until next time, let's wrap this up so that we can go deal with the stress of the Stanley Cup Final Game 7, which by the time you're listening to this is over long ago because this is fucking a long episode.
And Kanks for listening.
Kanks for listening. Until next time, you can find us everywhere at 3MI Podcast on all your socials or 3MIPodcast.com for other information in a shop with some fun shirts and some cool hats and some things. So check all that stuff out. Until then, I'm Hickey Mike.
I'm Smokes Indoors.
And Terry Ryan.
I am at Terry Ryan 2020 on Instagram and at Terry Ryan 20 on Twitter.
And so until next week, when we'll be back at you to shout at you about hockey.
You hang around with the worst crowd, the worst crowd, the worst crowd.